Well, we're back again. Season 2 of the iCarly reboot. And I've got some unfortunate news for all you iCarly fans out there. Those who had hope that maybe Season 2 could be better. It's not. It's really not. It's somehow maybe even worse than the first season. It brings me no pleasure. You heard how hard I was rooting for it in the previous video. I was putting out all my ideas and they didn't take any of it into account. Maybe that's due to the fact that I posted the video a month or two after Season 2 had already begun airing. Probably not. They should have been able to interpret my thoughts before the video even went on online. Season 3 is in development right now. Honestly, I didn't even think that Season 3 would happen. There were many points during this video, making this video, that I thought that Season 3 would never come. I thought that the show was probably just canceled. It wasn't until like a couple months ago that Season 3 was actually formally announced. So for the majority of this project, I actually had a section at the end of the video where I was just going to basically say, I think this show is canceled, because that's how it was looking. I mean, it didn't look good for the show at all. But for those unfamiliar with this, basically I'm going to go through the season episode by episode, talk about what's good, what's bad, and all the in-between stuff. In between the episodes, you'll get some segments that I'll, talk about certain characters or certain aspects of the show that I just have that don't make any sense to put in one episode. There are going to be a couple more detours in this video compared to the last one, just because there's just that much to talk about. And that's all I really have to say. I think we should just get right into things, to be honest. But before we get into episode 1, here's a recap of what happened in the season 1 finale. So in the season 1 finale, the iCarly gang goes to Webicon, and it's here where Carly is faced with a very tough decision. She must choose between staying with her current boyfriend Wes, or getting back together with her ex-boyfriend Beau. A decision that really just didn't make any sense to me at all. The episode ends on a cliffhanger, and everyone assumes that the answer will be found in the Season 2 premiere episode. And that's pretty much exactly what we get here. Season 2 Episode 1 is titled I Guess Everyone Just Hates Me Now, and begins with the cast in Spencer's apartment kitchen. Everyone is huddled around staring at what Spencer describes as a 9-layer brunch dip. And with this, we get another very strange comment between Harper and Spencer.
Combines all your favorites. Thank you for filling out my Google survey.
I'm still not sure why I had to tell you what deodorant I use.
Because you smell like an angel.
And I just don't understand why the writers keep doing stuff like this between the two. After this, we get a conclusion to the true cliffhanger that everyone was interested in coming into this season.
Oh, you mean my penis parasite? No, I'm good. After 2 months of round-the-clock meds, I can pee standing up again.
Millicent then arrives in the apartment and announces that there's been a new episode of the Whoa Bros show. That's right, Wes and Beau have started their own internet show together called the Whoa Bros show. And it's through this we discover that Carly actually broke up with both of them in the helicopter ride back to Seattle. I'm really not sure how to feel about this, because on one hand, I didn't expect her to stay with either of them for an extended period of time. But I mean, I still expected her to pick one or the other. I mean, if she did pick one of them, I still expected her to break up with him by the end of like the next episode or something. But bravo to the iCarly writers for once again subverting my expectations. Later on at Carly and Harper's apartment, Harper is having trouble feeding Double Dutch's dog Kevin, which she agreed to look after as Double Dutch was on tour. Carly then comes in rolling in a whiteboard and asks for suggestions to win the internet back onto her side. Carly starts fielding in suggestions from Spencer, Millicent, and Harper, but they're all pretty bad. Freddie walks in alongside Dr. Pearl Wallace, who is the Kevin App certified pet therapist. Pearl walks over to Harper and Kevin, and for no reason at all, Harper is immediately hostile to Pearl.
All right, then. Let's see what you can do, little Miss Wildthornberry.
Seriously, what is Harper's problem? It seems like in just the first 5 minutes of this episode, Harper has gotten way worse than she was in the entirety of season 1. Also, this is a little bit of a spoiler for what's to come in this season, but believe it or not, the audience is apparently supposed to hate Pearl. And the reason why I believe this is the rest of the iCarly cast treats Pearl like she's trash, minus Freddie. Every time Pearl shows up or is mentioned in the episodes, she's treated like she's annoying and unwanted, despite her actions showing that she seems like an average and respectable person. So Pearl begins to tell Harper what to do to fix her relationship with Kevin, and I'm just going to let this scene play out for you, and I think it perfectly illustrates why I hate Harper so much and why I actually think that Pearl's the best character in the iCarly universe.
You want a treat, you majestic floof? It's not the food you feed the dog, it's the energy you feed the dog.
I know you're helping, but I hate you.
I mean, just listen to the way that Pearl says floof.
You majestic floof?
I hate you.
How do you respond to that the way that Harper does? That is just mind-boggling. This scene makes me want to step into the television set and tell Harper, "Shut the fuck up!" So Pearl decides that this is a good time to head out, and as she's leaving, there's some dialogue between her and Freddie that makes it kind of obvious that there's something going on there romantically, although there's nothing outright said that confirms this. After that, Freddie begins talking to Spencer, and we find out that Spencer is in charge of putting together a launch party for Freddie's new app. However, Freddie tells Spencer that he doesn't want the launch party to be lit, and with this, he adds on Millicent to the party planning, as he believes that she'll make sure the party is serious. Later at the iCarly studio, Carly has invited Bo and Wes to come on the show to try and settle the beef, or at the very least, have the internet hate her less. And great news, Freddie has an actual camera for this web broadcast. The only caveat I have here is, why the hell is the camera so small? It's almost like they remembered that there were critiques about Freddie using his phone to film the web show while they were filming the episode, and just had someone go run out and find the first camera prop they could find. Okay, I know this is kind of nitpicky, but just look at Freddie's camera from the original show. That's still nothing in comparison to this puny little camera he's holding. So after the web show begins, Carly explains to both Bo and Wes that the reason why she broke up with both of them is that they both professed their love for her, but she just couldn't reciprocate those same feelings to them. And I mean, that was kind of obvious from the get-go, Wes. You should have realized that when she was hesitating between picking you and Bo. So after Carly explains this to Wes and Bo, they both start telling Carly that she'll never find real love and she'll always be alone. And in response to this, Carly does the classic thing that she always does and lies.
Because I do have a boyfriend.
And Wes's direct response to this is done in a way that really reminds me of Steve from Blue's Clues, which I find hilarious, and it doesn't make any sense when you look at Wes's character from season 1.
With who?
Like, just his behavior in general here feels like a completely different character. So now with Carly put on the spot by herself and with no idea what to say, Freddie has to jump in and say that he is the boyfriend. Later, Carly and Freddie have a fake date as a fake couple at a real onion patch, and a pack of fans show up declaring how happy and excited they are that Carly and Freddie have finally gotten together. Freddie's mom also shows up, declaring that she is similarly excited that they are getting together. Back at Carly and Harper's apartment, Harper is massaging Kevin because she claims that the dog is too tense. And either this dog is a horrible actor, or I'm just, too stupid to realize that this dog is tense. Spencer and Millicent also come in, and they've both been arguing over how to best plan the party for Freddie's app launch. Spencer wants the party to be a lot more fun, and Millicent is wanting the party to be very serious. Spencer asks Harper for advice on what they should do, and Harper says that they should listen to Millicent. Later, Carly is getting ready for the party in the apartment, and Freddie comes in, and they share this moment with each other.
This whole fake relationship thing isn't bringing up any real feelings for you, is it?
No. Why? What about you? Did my kiss unlock some dark, secret yearning lying dormant at the bottom of your heart?
No.
But soon after this, Pearl shows up and warns both Freddie and Carly that they really should go and check out the party because it's looking very sad. When they show up at Spencer's apartment, it's very obvious that this party looks more like a funeral than anything else. And when trying to explain this to Spencer, Spencer apparently had no idea that this looked like a funeral the entire time. And while this execution isn't completely horrible, I can't help but think that it would be funnier if Spencer purposefully made it look like a funeral. Like, I can just imagine everyone coming in and saying, "Spencer, this looks like a funeral," and then Spencer goes, "Yeah, but I'm gonna put the fun in funeral," and then he presses a button and a disco ball comes down or something, I don't know. Or even better, after he says he's gonna put the fun in funeral, he points to a giant cake, and then he yells it again, and then some guy pops out. And then Spencer's like, "You should have came out the first time." And then he's mad, but it's the guy runs out covered in the frosting or something. So Freddie's talking to Pearl about how he should have planned the party instead of Spencer and Millicent, and then Pearl says that it's understandable since he was so busy with iCarly and being Carly's boyfriend. And then Freddie quickly explains to her that that was just pretend and for the show, and in reality he is single. Carly begins live streaming and she moves towards the kitchen, and once she does this, Harper, who is behind the camera, aka the phone, pans over to the left and shows that Freddie is making out with Pearl. And I have no idea why Harper does this, because this is very simply avoidable by Harper keeping the camera pointed at Carly like she was supposed to do. I have no idea why Harper even panned the camera over there in the first place. Like, there's no world in which what Harper did was not intentional. It's not like she had no idea that Freddie was over there making out with Pearl before she panned the camera there. Also, this organ somehow magically transported from the other side of the room to now this location in the kitchen. Either that or Spencer is extremely strong and fast and was able to pick the organ up by himself and move it over there in record time. So Freddie and Carly sit down to discuss the situation, and Freddie thinks that she should just break up with him because in the eyes of the audience, Freddie was the one that cheated on her. And then Carly gets up and slaps Freddie, which just seems entirely out of character for Carly. I just can't think of any other scenario in which Carly has acted violently towards someone else besides the Shelby Marks fight, I guess, if you want to count that. Feel free to prove me wrong in the comments if you can think of anything, because I'm drawing a blank here. Meanwhile, upstairs, Harper is having a meeting with Double Dutch over what I assume is Zoom or Skype. And really the only important thing worth mentioning here is that Harper and Double Dutch decide that they should not be dating because Double Dutch is going to continue to tour and they don't want to do a long distance relationship. This is the least surprising thing to ever happen in the show, because if they're still dating, then how is Harper going to hit on a woman every episode? Back downstairs, Carly is doing yet another live stream where she announces that she is no longer dating Freddie. This is yet another instance where I really don't understand why Carly doesn't just do video content instead of live streaming. Like, this isn't something that she has to do during a live stream. Almost everything that she's done on one of her live streams this far has been something that would make more sense to consume in a video format anyway. But hey, what do I know? Maybe I should have been just live streaming my critiques of this show instead of working for hours on end on these videos. So after Carly announces that she is no longer dating Freddie, she says that if anyone is mad, they should just go and buy Freddie's new app on the App Store. Or I guess they call it the Pear Store. And after this, a bunch of iCarly fans who also happen to be at this party run over and say that they actually don't hate Freddie and they hate Pearl instead. Because in their eyes, Pearl is the one that ruined the relationship, not Freddie. After this, Spencer also reveals that Pearl has been doxxed online, which is one step closer to one of my plot lines that I so dearly hoped they would do for season 2. Have an episode where Carly gets doxxed and her address is put up online for everyone to see and she has to move and she gets swatted. Carly also comes clean to everyone and says that the whole relationship between her and Freddie was faked for the web show. And now we can officially mark that at least 2 episodes in the series have had a real resolution. So good job to the writers, I guess. Overall, while it's not my favorite episode of anything ever, I still think that it was a pretty solid episode, especially for a season 2 opener. And I'm going to go ahead and be honest here and say that it's really mostly downhill from here on out. One small objection to that downhillness of season 2, however, comes in the form of episode 2, I Object Lubert. In fact, I actually think that this episode is one of the best, if not the best, in the entire reboot series. Although I do have to say that the praise that I give this episode is mostly due to the concept alone, as I feel like the execution of the idea is just not all there, and it could have been done a lot better. This was actually one of the episodes that I was looking forward to watching the most in the lead up to season 2's premiere, but by the time the episode had reached its halfway mark, I was starting to lose hope and interest in the idea as a whole. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves just yet. Let's back it up to the beginning of the episode. The episode begins with Harper, Carly, and Freddie filming a video, I think, for iCarly. I don't know, just the way that they produce content for iCarly is a little baffling to me because it seems like they just pick and choose what content is filmed and what content is live broadcasted. Millicent walks in while they're recording and makes a remark, and no one really seems to care that she's just come in and interrupted them while they're filming. But then moments later, Spencer also comes in, and Carly makes a big deal about Spencer interrupting them while they're filming.
Spencer, we're filming. You can't just interrupt while I'm working.
Like, okay, I'm supposed to believe that maybe Millicent is someone that the viewers actually want to see interrupt the iCarly web broadcast, but no, you can't do it if you're Spencer because everyone hates Spencer. That guy's unwelcomed on the iCarly broadcast. Anyway, this lady is tagging along with Spencer into the studio, and she claims that she has a petition that she wants them to sign for climate change awareness or something. So the lady gets Carly to sign the petition, and then she immediately reveals that these were actually papers to sue Carly. Which, first of all, I'm pretty sure that this is illegal. I'm actually surprised that this wasn't just there to have as a nice little resolution at the end that they could use to get out of the court proceedings with Lubert. But yeah, no, it just doesn't come back up again in the episode. It's just here for like a little funny gag or something. So downstairs, Carly is showing Harper some of the videos that they did of messing with Lubert, and Harper comes to the realization that the iCarly gang actually just tormented Lubert, and she is starting to sympathize more with Lubert than the iCarly gang. Spencer also comes in and announces that he would be willing to represent Carly in the case, and he guarantees that he can get it thrown out due to his 3 days at law school. Carly, on the other hand, announces that she will simply just apologize to Lubert, and that will be the end of things. But before we get to the court proceedings, we are introduced to this episode's B-plot, which involves Millicent, Olive, and Harper. Millicent doesn't think she connects as well with Olive because she's more interested in adult things, and Olive is still into playing with horsies. I'm just going to go ahead and summarize this episode's B-plot because I don't really have much to say about it, and I don't find it interesting in the slightest. Basically, Millicent tries to hang out more with Harper because she feels like she can connect with people more when it's on adult-related topics. But then she soon realizes that she's not ready for the responsibilities of being an adult and goes back to hanging out with Olive. I don't even necessarily think that this storyline is bad. I just think that I don't really care to see Millicent in a storyline on her own for the most part. I just still can't get around to liking Millicent as a character on her own due to her just unrelenting rudeness to everyone she comes into contact with. So now we can finally get to the meat of this episode, the court proceedings. Carly, Freddie, and Spencer show up, and they immediately remark on how Lubert's appearance has changed since the last time they all saw him. Lubert has definitely cleaned himself up and is now wartless. Carly even remarks that he looks handsome. Carly then proceeds to give Lubert her planned apology, and then court gets underway. Carly then announces to the judge and the rest of the courtroom that there is no reason for this to go on any further as she has just apologized to Lubert. Carly, however, quickly finds out that the apology did not do anything to sway Lubert from backing off his legal proceedings. And Lubert announces that he is suing Carly Shay for $1 million, which this is apparently the first time that Carly is finding out how much she is being sued for. Shouldn't the papers that Carly received at the beginning of the episode have detailed that information for her? Granted, I've never been sued before and I'm too lazy to look this information up because I'm very confident that I'm right, but I feel like basic information such as the amount that you're being sued for should be given to you before you arrive at the courtroom for your court proceedings. And if that information was indeed left out of the papers that Carly received, then this is just yet another thing that shows that the case should be thrown out just due to sheer incompetence alone. So now the trial has officially begun, and Lubert calls up Freddie Benson as his first witness. So a clip from one of the Messin' with Lubert videos is played in the courtroom, and then Freddie and Lubert have this exchange.
Pretty horrific, wouldn't you say?
No, I wouldn't. And none of it was
Your idea? Oh, I know, sweet Freddie. After all, whose name is on the show?
Carly, but that's not...
Your fault. Of course not. I agree. Why wasn't it we, Carly?
We actually did discuss it, but apparently it tested poorly.
With who?
Carly.
And this is just canonically not true at all. It was established in the first episode that Freddie was the one that came up with the name iCarly.
Why don't you guys call your show iCarly? You know, Internet, Carly, you.
I like it. iCarly's cool.
It kind of baffles me how they just neglected this very crucial detail. So Lubert essentially uses Freddie as a way to paint Carly as a bad person. And he does this so effectively that he gets Freddie to cry on the stand and somewhat admit that Carly has manipulated him. Now that Freddy's done, we see that the next person to be up on the witness stand is Guppy, the brother of the one and only Gibby. And in my opinion, this is where the episode goes downhill. From here on out, we essentially just get a revolving door of characters from the original show showing up so we can say, oh, I remember them, without much more substance to the actual episode. So Guppy was called up to the stand by Lubert to attest to Gibby's stunts that he performed on iCarly. And this is essentially just another way for Lubert to show that the iCarly gang was not really the kindest or most thoughtful when it comes to the mental and physical well-being of the people that they surround themselves with. But this is another thing that I just don't really think would fly in an actual court setting. Like, why didn't you just get Gibby to attest to this? Anyway, after Guppy is up on the stand, we are greeted with yet another recurring character from the original iCarly series, Chuck. If you don't remember who Chuck was, in the original series he was this kid that lived in the apartment building that Spencer also lived in, and Chuck essentially became Spencer's nemesis. Most notably, Chuck once sprayed Spencer with an unidentifiable liquid from a water gun. So Spencer and Chuck go at it, and Spencer is ejected from the courtroom. Carly then decides that she is going to represent herself, which really isn't that bad of an idea when you compare it to Spencer representing her. For Carly's first witness, she decides to bring in Mrs. Benson, and for whatever reason, she gets the classic studio applause sound effect. Which is really not needed because we just saw her in the previous episode. However, Lubert is once again successful in turning the witness against Carly, and he actually makes out with her. And after this, he all of a sudden decides that he would like to add the iCarly website along with the $1 million that he wants to collect from Carly. And this is yet another head scratcher because I'm pretty sure you can't just add stuff to your winnings for court proceedings. And I mean like in the middle of the actual trial. But yeah, like I've already said, I'm no lawyer, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm pretty confident that you can't do this. Carly decides to send herself to the witness stand, and Lubert proceeds to detail every single thing that Carly has done to him. But then Carly turns it right back around on Lubert and proceeds to tell him all of the great things that he's done for her, whether he meant to do it or not. And it's this that finally gets Lubert to snap and revert to his old self. And for whatever reason, Lubert's wart reappears, and I don't understand why or how this happens. Like, he just kind of runs and jumps into the judge's stand, and then it's just there. Lubert runs out of the courthouse, and then everyone begins applauding, thinking that it's all over and they won for some reason. The judge even corrects them and says, no, that's not how this works. But that just leaves me to say, well, that's not how any of this is supposed to work, but here we are. The judge then rules in Lubert's favor and says that Carly must pay $250,000. We then cut to Spencer's apartment where everyone is celebrating their victory over Lubert, which I typically don't consider a victory when you have to pay $250,000 to the opposing party in a legal proceeding, but go off, I guess. So that's pretty much the whole episode, and like I said at the beginning, I feel like that this is one of the strongest concepts that they've had for an episode in this reboot so far, but it just doesn't quite hit the mark. I think it would have been a lot more interesting to see Lubert play various clips from Messing with Lubert, and then have Carly or Spencer or Freddie try and defend those clips in any way they could possibly try. And also, if we're going to see some recurring characters come back, please give them more screen time than just a minute. I would personally love to see Chuck come back for another episode, but I'm going to be honest and say I just don't see that coming. Overall, I'd give this episode an A for concept and maybe like a D- for execution. Episode 3 begins with the iCarly cast in Spencer's apartment playing a game of Never Have I Ever. And it's this game of Never Have I Ever that initiates the events of the A-plot in the episode, as everyone around Carly realizes that she hasn't really done anything crazy enough to even participate in the game. And this is just flat out incorrect. There are countless examples of Carly doing weird, crazy, and wild things in the original series. But I mean, I guess we're already at that point in the reboot series where the writers can't come up with any new ideas without breaking the canon of the original show, so that's awesome. In the B-plot of the episode, Spencer is feeling bad for ruining Freddy's Kevin app launch party in the previous episode, so he buys the groovy smoothie for Freddy to use as office space. Freddy is surprisingly into this idea, and he begins pointing out areas where he wants to set up his office, but with each spot that Freddy chooses, Spencer has a reason why he can't put it there. Freddy gives up on this for now and says that he has to do a video call with a person in Japan and that Millicent would be translating it for him. Spencer is understandably surprised by this and asks Millicent, "You speak Japanese?" And Millicent responds in Japanese saying, "When you underestimate young women, you only tell on yourself." And I'm really confused on this response because Spencer was in no way underestimating Millicent. Nonetheless, because she was a woman, Millicent is simply just being rude again for no discernible reason. On another note, Millicent's subtitles for her Japanese translation were just oddly timed. They show up like 5 seconds after she begins talking. Back in the A-plot, Carly and Harper have decided that they're going to go out for a night of fun, hoping to get into some wild and crazy antics on the way. They end up going to this mall that has the strangest layout I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, this is just apparently a standalone bar in the mall. Like, it's not inside a restaurant or a store, it's just out in the general mall walking area. I mean, I guess a mall layout like this could hypothetically exist somewhere in the world, but I certainly have never come across anything like this before. So Carly comes back to the table with a drink, and she tells Harper that she got it for free, and she accomplished this by giving the bartender her phone number. The bartender decides to go ahead and call the number to see if it's actually hers, and when Carly's phone starts ringing, it sounds like this.
It's him.
To me, it sounds like they just decided to apply a generic telephone muffle sound effect to the ringtone for some reason. Whereas you would typically use a sound effect like this on someone that's voice is coming through the phone. I know that this is like a minuscule thing in the scope of this show, but I don't know, it just stood out to me. Anyway, Carly asks Harper what she should do next to be wild and crazy, and Harper suggests that she kiss a stranger. So Carly gets up and goes over to the stranger and kisses him. And for whatever reason, they played this sound effect. What the hell is this? I thought this sound effect was reserved for like 2 main characters kissing, but the show expects me to have this audible reaction when Carly goes over and kisses this guy I've never seen before. Okay, cool. Carly once again goes to Harper and asks her what she should do next, and Harper suggests that she get into a bar fight. Carly asks if she can get in the bar fight with the same guy she just kissed, and Harper says yeah. So she goes over and throws a drink in his face for no reason. And all I can say is keep these actions in mind because I'm going to have a lot to say about this in the segment that follows this episode. Back in the B-plot, Freddy is in the middle of a meeting and Spencer comes over and shuts his laptop and proceeds to show Freddy the sticks that Tebow used to use in the Groovy Smoothie to sell his famous food on a stick ideas. Freddy is understandably upset by this, and after Freddy and Spencer have a brief conversation that isn't worth rehashing through this audio, Freddy goes back to his meeting. Notably, however, Millicent does not rejoin Freddy in the meeting, which begs the question, what is Freddy doing right now if he's at the meeting? I can only imagine that Freddy is brainlessly nodding along to this Japanese man like Joe Biden getting questioned at a press conference, or like a baby watching the latest Dream SMP video, or like Northern Lion when he realizes he can do a buy-sell build in Super Auto Pets, or like the guy in front of me in the 2008 silver Nissan Altima who doesn't realize the light is green, or like the people who buy and eat the hot dogs at the 7-Eleven, or like the guy who's in prison and thinks he's going to get out next week, or like the person who always makes the same order at Chipotle because they're scared to try anything new, or like the person who keeps saying when this pandemic is over, or like the person who thinks that life is just a series of experiences that you should just push through without ever stepping back to reflect on them, or like the person who thinks that the entire world revolves around them and no one else is experiencing any sort of hardship, like they don't have problems or anything, they're just perfect and they don't understand the challenges that other people go through and they need to wake up and see the world through other people's eyes because maybe then they'd realize that their actions have consequences and that they're not the only people in the world, and maybe then they'd realize that they're not weren't necessarily right all the time, and that they could learn something from someone else instead of just dismissing them outright, because at the end of the day, we're all just people, and we all have our own problems, and we all deserve to be respected and listened to. Or like you watching this video. So anyway, Spencer is inquiring Millicent about what he should do with the groovy smoothie, whether he should try and revitalize it or turn it into his own restaurant. And he ultimately decides that he'll turn it into his own restaurant. Back in the A-plot, Carly is continuing to be wild and crazy, aka being an obnoxious asshole by throwing food at this guy at a table. Carly then decides that she wants to get a tattoo to really round out her wild and crazy night, and so she drags Harper into the tattoo parlor with her. Back at the groovy smoothie, Freddie is growing even more impatient with Spencer's antics as he comes out on roller skates and declares that the food will also be on wheels at his restaurant. Spencer then loses control of the cart with all the food and drinks on it, and the drinks spill onto Freddie's laptop. And this is essentially the final nail in the coffin for these two's professional relationship together. It's also revealed that the Japanese man that Freddie has been having this meeting with the whole time could speak English the whole time, which is odd because he was speaking Japanese the whole time. And Freddie was very clearly speaking in English, so if he could speak English, why didn't he just speak English in the first place? I know this feels like whiplash at this point, but going back to the A-plot, we see Carly revealing her brand new tattoo to Harper. And before they head home for the night, Carly wants to do one last wild and crazy thing. And that thing is to jump into the fountain at the mall. But when they do this, they immediately get caught by a mall security guard and are sent to mall jail. In the mall jail, Carly realizes that her tattoo is running and asks Harper if that is a normal thing. And Harper reveals to Carly that her tattoo is a temporary tattoo. Granted, this is Carly's first ever tattoo, but surely she would have realized that something was up when she was feeling absolutely no pain whatsoever while receiving the tattoo. I mean, I feel like it's pretty common knowledge that getting a tattoo is somewhat painful, and yet this never really crossed Carly's mind, I guess. The mall security guard comes back in and tests Carly's alcohol level and discovers that her alcohol level is 0.0. Harper then reveals that the alcohol that Carly had was not even alcohol. And basically the whole night was orchestrated by Harper. Man, this is like a worse version of the rehearsal. Back at the groovy smoothie, Freddie and Spencer both agree that they should not be working together, finally, and also do a subtle joke making fun of the revival of iCarly. You know, the show that they're making right now.
Can it still pander to the fans of the original?
Of course. How else are you supposed to succeed?
Carly gets the mall security guard to let Harper and herself go, and the episode ends the same way it started, with the game of Never Have I Ever. This time with Carly now recounting all of the wild and crazy things she has just done over the course of the episode. Also, Spencer names the bar Bar F, which looks like barf. And then the episode really does end there. So I already stated at the beginning of this episode why this just does not work, and it just breaks the original show's canon by erasing all of the weird and crazy things that Carly did. But even if we go along with the writer's fan fiction here of Carly being this sweet little innocent girl who's never done anything, it's still a bad episode, and it actually opens up more questions to me about the character of all of the characters in the original iCarly series. And that leads us right into a detour. Carly is a nice, easygoing, beautiful, smart, and caring person who would do anything for her friends. This is the personality of Carly Shay, according to the iCarly wiki page. And to that, I bring your attention to these clips. In iPhopology, Carly created a problem that she refused to fix herself even though she was more than capable of fixing it. In iRobot Wedding, Carly falsely believes that Neville's wife-to-be is a robot and throws a magnet at her forehead. In I Need Space, Carly suggests that Harper use the iCarly studio for her fashion designing work and then goes to the iCarly studio to work and be loud and annoying. In I Return to Webicon, Carly gets pissed off at Wes because he prepared for a disaster scenario and then they ended up in a disaster scenario. In I Object Lubert, Carly pleads innocent to all of the damages that she caused to Lubert's personal well-being, and all of the messing with Lubert segments are evidence on on its own that they are not good people. Pretty much everything Carly does to this poor bartender in I'm Wild and Crazy. In I Hire an Assistant, Carly forces her granddad to work for her because she would rather do that than actually spend any valuable time with him. And that's just all the stuff from the Revival series so far. There's probably more examples I could find if I went back through the original iCarly series, and I definitely missed some stuff in the reboot, but this is just to give you an example. And I'm pointing all this out because after watching this reboot season, I'm genuinely not sure if the characters on iCarly are actually good people or not. And that's not really a problem if they are bad people, but it just doesn't really seem like the show wants to acknowledge that in any way. And it doesn't really help that they've added 2 new characters to the show who are both really not good people in their own rights. Millicent is a pretty open and shut case here when it comes to someone being regarded as a bad person, but you might be a little bit confused about why I'm saying that when it comes to Harper. Well, if you just wait until the end of this season, or I guess until the end of this video, I think you'll see that Harper does indeed become a bad person by the end of this season. What started out as a character that just makes snarky remarks to people every once in a while has become a character that just lashes out at people that she's just met for seemingly no reason. And when thinking about Harper in this lens, it made me realize, well, isn't that just what Sam Puckett was? Sam was very abrasive and seemingly had no filter. She would lash out at almost everyone with rude or snarky comments. Why did I pronounce comments like that? Comments? What the hell am I talking about? Just like Harper does. But the main difference here is that Sam was a teenager. And yes, that doesn't excuse what she did, but you just assume that, yeah, she'll probably age out of this and mature eventually. And I'm gonna be honest, if she didn't mature at least a little bit and she was brought back in the reboot, I think she would have not been a good character. She would have been good if she was a little bit like how she was back in the original iCarly series, but she had matured a little bit, or at least she was in the process of maturing. Anyway, Harper on the other hand, she's in her mid-20s and she's acting like this. That's not a fun or quirky character, that's just someone who's annoying and rude to be around. Episode 4 is titled I Hire an Assistant, and we start out with Carly watering plants in the iCarly studio. Spencer shows up and Carly explains that she is running a plant live stream where viewers can tune in and watch the plants grow. It's also here that it is revealed that Grandpa Shay is coming to visit next week. That's right, everyone's favorite character from the original iCarly series, Grandpa Shay, is making his triumphant return. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I was watching the episode and I heard that Grandpa Shay was going to return, I just didn't know what to do with myself. I'm just glad that it seems that my Bring Back Grandpa Shay letter writing campaign has paid off. So I just realized that his name is actually Granddad Shay and not Grandpa Shay. But that Bring Back Grandpa Shay letter writing campaign took me so many attempts to get right, and I just don't want to do it again. Anyway, this is my admittance of failure and mistake making. So yeah, anyway, let's carry on. So Granddad Shay shows up a week early and everyone is talking, blah, blah, blah. They make some jokes. And after one of the jokes, they play these canned laughter sound effects. And one of them just caught my attention. I'll play it for you now and see if you can figure it out.
Hey, let's all go around and say what we like about each other's life choices.
If my ears don't deceive me, that sounds like a child's laugh. I don't know, I just think it's a little confusing, a little odd, a little strange to have a laugh sound effect with a child's laugh on a show that discusses sexual themes and adult content. Not to say that I'm sticking up for the kids here. I don't think a child actually watched this show. They weren't recording a live studio audience. I just think it's weird, that's an odd choice. But most notably, as this cold opening is coming to a close, Granddad Shay reveals that he has a coin collection. And believe it or not, is going to be a heavy player for the remainder of the episode. And before we move on from the cold opening, there's one thing that I'd like to point out that shows that the writers of this show aren't the only people who don't care. Take a look at this masterful camera work displayed as the camera wobbles as it moves. The camera person definitely didn't care. And if there's anyone on set to supervise the shots on this show, they for sure did not care. And unfortunately, this isn't the last time I'll be pointing out something like this. We then return to the iCarly studio where Carly is continuing her plant cam stuff, and I'm once again confused by the type of content that the iCarly web broadcast is delivering, because she just kind of abruptly ends this live stream, which looks more so like a little clip that you would film for a vlog or something. And I really hate to say it, but I think that they need to get some sort of influencer on the writing staff, because it's very obvious that the people writing these episodes have absolutely no idea what kind of content people consume on the internet. Like, just simply change the little icon to be a recording icon. Not everything has to be live streamed, and it doesn't make sense for her to live stream literally everything, especially when it's like an 8-second clip of her watering her plants. Who the hell is watching this? Certainly not 11,000 people. And when Carly ends her live stream, she does it because she's getting a phone call on her phone that she's using to live stream. She goes on a little rant about how she's always getting calls and she's always so busy and she needs a planner. Hey Carly, maybe if you used an actual camera instead of your phone for everything, your live stream wouldn't have been interrupted. Anyway, Carly is going on about how she's having a hard time finding time to spend with Granddad, and she goes over to her desk to look through her sticky notes to see what kind of things she has planned, and she starts complaining about how bad her system is, and Granddad comes over and shows her his planner. And despite the fact that the only thing that Granddad Shay has in his planner are sticky notes to tell him to watch Third Rock from the Sun, and the fact that he also lives in a city far away from Seattle, Carly decides to make Granddad Shay her personal assistant. Over at Spencer's restaurant Shay What, yes, that is the name of the restaurant now instead of Bar F, we are introduced to one of the worst subplots I have ever had to endure in my entire life. And it's completely understandable if you don't find this subplot as repulsive as I do, as it involves something that I have personal deep distaste for, and that happens to be astrology. And I truly don't mean this as any disrespect to people who believe in astrology out there, but the way that characteristics and personality traits are applied to a broad sect of people just seems ridiculous to me, and yet that seems to be the cornerstone of astrology. And unfortunately, that's basically the entire subplot of this episode. So Pearl gets up to leave, and Harper makes this comment.
You better go. Finding a parking spot in Seattle is like finding a quiet Aries.
So true. Don't even get me started on how an Aries gets gas.
I've never related to Freddie Benson more in my life. Although, to be fair, I think I would have actually just responded with, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Freddie says that Pearl is really into astrology and he wishes that he could communicate with her about that, but he just has no idea what any of the astrology stuff is. So Harper has Freddie input all of his information to fill out a birth chart, and she reads it, and what do you know? Their birthstones are compatible, or birth signs are... something's compatible. And with this, Harper believes that they are soulmates. Very cool, very epic, and Freddie also once again has a response that I think I would have said.
Come on, Harper, this whole thing is bogus.
Back at Spencer's apartment, Carly is hanging out with her new personal assistant, Granddad. Carly gets a phone call and she goes to answer it, but then Granddad reminds her that he's her personal assistant and should handle stuff like phone calls, so he answers the call. The call is for Carly's pottery person who is supposed to supply pots for Carly's plants, but Granddad thinks that it's weed, and he gets really upset and he hangs up the phone, but he actually doesn't. He just puts the phone down on the table face down. And then after that, Granddad goes and sits on the couch and is like, Carly, do this. You should make a list of things I need to do. And then you should also get me some food. And yeah, you can see where this is going, right? He's just going to be asking Carly to do things for him, and she's going to have to become his personal assistant. Do you understand? Do you get it? You get it? Later, Carly goes to Shay What to pick up a steak for Granddad Shay, and runs into Harper and Freddie, who tell Carly that Granddad Shay has been leaving rude and insensitive comments on the iCarly website or video or live stream. I'm not really sure what their deal is, you know? I'm going to be confused forever, I suppose. Also, I regret to inform you that once again, the camera is shaking in this shot. Unbelievable. They just don't care. They simply do not care. Harper and Freddie go to the bar to pick up their drinks, and it turns out that they both ordered the same exact thing, further proving to Harper that they are indeed soulmates. Back at the iCarly studio, Millicent and Granddad Shay are filming and or broadcasting a coin-related broadcast and or video. I am once again unsure because as soon as the broadcast and or video is over, Millicent simply just picks up the camera and walks away with it. Like, she doesn't stop the broadcast. She doesn't even press anything on the camera. More notably, however, they did achieve 17,000 maximum viewers on their coin broadcast, which I assume is still going to this day because Millicent never stopped it. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I think that this coin live stream is better content than any of the iCarly broadcast stuff we've gotten to see in this reboot. 10 out of 10. I would watch it. And also to further confuse me, Carly says this.
You filmed that on my live stream?
What the hell does you film this on my broadcast mean? Are you filming it or are you live streaming it? You can't do both at, well, I mean, I guess you can, but you can't film on a broadcast. It doesn't make any sense. What the hell are you talking about? And to top it all off, Granddad hands Carly a list of things that he wants her to do while they prepare for the next coin segment. Oh man, Carly, you've gotten yourself in a heap of trouble now. Oh, how are you going to get yourself out of this one? You can't you can't fire your granddad. That's messed up, man. You can't do that. Back at Freddie Benson's mother's apartment, Freddie and Pearl are working on Kevin app-related stuff when Harper comes in and announces that Freddie and her are soulmates, and Harper says, okay, yeah, sure, I agree, I guess. And that's because it turns out that Pearl is also a perfect match with Freddie. So Harper and Pearl say that they need to figure this out with salsa dancing, and I don't know, this is a little weird, like, isn't Pearl dating Freddie? What, shouldn't she be fighting a little harder than this to, like, make sure she keeps her boyfriend? I'm supposed to sit here and expect that Pearl is just going to let her relationship go away because Harper happens to dance better than her? Like, okay, cool, that makes sense. I don't know, maybe this is how the people in the astrology community solve their problems. If someone comes in and points a gun at you, you say, all right, well, let's salsa dance, and if you are a better dancer than me, you get to have all my possessions. Back at Spencer's apartment, things have gotten way out of hand with Granddad's coin streams. Now Spencer's in on it too, answering the emails? Jeez, what's next? Anyway, Carly's finally had enough and tells Granddad that he's been fired, but then also says that she'll answer some more emails for him because she feels bad. And when she does this, she finds someone claiming to be an old friend and enemy of Granddad, saying that he will kill him. Apparently, Granddad stole this guy's coin collection, and now he's after him to kill him. And this just kind of makes me think that they had two different story ideas and couldn't decide between the two, so they just decided to combine both of them. Or maybe they just realized that they could only do so much with the assistant plotline, and they had to tack something else at the end of the episode for the runtime. Either way, it feels kind of clunky, especially when you add on this guy trying to kill the grandpa at the very end. It's also here that we get the first of several references to artist Ricky Martin, who frankly I had no idea who he was when I first watched this, but apparently he had a song in the top 10 on the Billboard charts on my birthday, so that's kind of cool, I guess.
It's not like they're front row tickets to Ricky Martin.
I don't know, I just found it weird that someone on the writing staff obviously has some sort of infatuation to this guy because he is written into several episodes mentioned exclusively by Carly, if I'm not mistaken. And not to say that he's a nobody, but I feel like he is kind of an obscure celebrity in that regard. It seems like it would make more sense for them to choose someone a little bit more modern, or at least someone that many people would recognize immediately. But who knows, maybe I'm in the minority. Maybe Ricky Martin is a household name and I'm just not in the house. Anyway, Spencer has agreed to help Granddad not die, I guess. And he's going to do this with a plan.
Well, thank you for being a part of my plan. My secret plan. It's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. Part of the plan!
I feel like this had the potential to be pretty funny, but just the sheer number of times they repeated it kind of took that effect away from me. So Spencer reveals that he's sewn in the coins from Granddad's coin collection into his pants to disguise them as salsa slacks. And not much else is explained about what Spencer's plan entails besides, I guess, these salsa slacks with the coins sewed into them. So Granddad's rival Vinny shows up at the restaurant, and watching these two characters interact with each other felt like I was watching a completely different show. And I'm saying this because I sincerely think that this is a great moment from the episode.
Give me my coins back. What coins? The coins on your coin collecting show, which I watched and really enjoyed, by the way.
These two actors are clearly very talented at what they do. They've both been acting pretty much their entire lives, and it shows. I am 100% interested in seeing a dramedy spin-off between these two characters, and this idea would only be good if Vince Gilligan was on board. That's all. So Harper, Freddie, and Pearl all show up at Shea What to have a salsa dancing competition to determine who should be Freddie's girlfriend. Freddie makes this comment.
Well, I'm ready for salsa dancing to decide who I'm compatible with, even though I've already decided I like Pearl and astrology is ridiculous.
And yeah, he's 100% right here in being really dismissive of this and kind of bored, because that's how I felt when I was watching this plot. There isn't anything at stake here. We already know that he's not going to get with Harper. Who cares if he stays with Pearl by the end of the season? We know that that's probably unlikely, but like, at least we know for now he's going to choose Pearl over Harper, and especially over something as stupid as a salsa dancing competition. So Freddie and Harper begin dancing, and then we cut back to Vinny and Granddad, who are still kind of bickering about things, and then Spencer shows up, gets pushed around, and pushed into Harper and Freddie, and then for no reason at all, Harper and Spencer decide to start dancing with each other. Once again, I will reiterate, I have no idea why this is needed in the episode. I just feel like my time is being wasted now. Like, they keep doing these little flirty moments between these two characters, expecting the audience to actually feel like it's worth anything. It's like, no, these two characters have absolutely zero chemistry together, let alone as friends. I mean, it's more likely that Spencer ends up marrying Gibby than Harper. Anyway, so Pearl and Freddie start dancing, and they keep dancing, and they keep dancing, and they keep dancing. And all I could think while I was watching this is just, why are they doing this? Like, what is the point of all this? Not to say that dancing is not artful or interesting, but in a comedy show, I feel like they should have chosen something a little bit more engaging and objective. Like, I don't know, maybe have them compete in a video game or a board game or literally anything with scoring. And by the way, I am aware that dancing competitions have some sort of scoring method, but I'm saying that in a dancing competition, the scores are given based on the judge's interpretation of the art, the dancing that is happening. Whereas if you play a board game or a video game, there are set rules and points that are assigned to you no matter what. No one is sitting on the other end interpreting it in their own way. It is objective. These are the points that you get. You have them. These are yours. So Freddie and Pearl keep dancing, but then they fall over, which means that they have lost the dancing competition, and thus Freddie must break up with Pearl and begin a relationship with Harper. However, due to Harper's bisexuality, she sees a woman that she finds attractive, asks her for her star sign, and then when she realizes that they're compatible, she tells Freddie that he can continue dating Pearl. Wow, bisexuals stay winning, am I right? #slay. Meanwhile, Vinny is ready to kill Granddad, but before he can do that, Carly goes and rips Spencer's pants off and hands it over to him. Vinny walks out with Spencer's coin-laden pants, and Granddad Shea reveals that he is very sad now that he can't pass the coins down to the next generation. However, Spencer reveals that the coins on his pants were fake coins, and that the real coins were hidden on the wall. Harper dances with Granddad Shea for some reason, and then the episode ends. Given how comprehensive I've already been with this episode, I don't really think there's much left to be said, but I will say one last thing. I did not enjoy this episode. Episode 5 is titled iCupid, and in strong contrast to the previous episode, I've got a feeling that I'm not going to have nearly as much to say about this one. So the episode begins with yet another canon-breaking joke as Spencer is playing the saxophone and apparently is tone deaf because he claims to be playing Careless Whisper by George Michael, and yet it doesn't sound anything like it. And the reason why I say this is a canon-breaking joke is because in the original series, Spencer was seen playing the banjo. So it just doesn't really make any sense to me that Spencer could play this and then play this and not realize that he is just playing random garbage on the saxophone. Anyway, Pearl is here, and remember how at the beginning of the video I said that the audience is supposed to hate Pearl? Well, here's some of that sprinkled into this dialogue.
Because she's my perfect little cupcake.
You're my perfect little jelly bean. We're the worst.
The worst.
Yeah, you really do suck.
So the main thing that's going on in this cold opening is that Spencer is having what I can only describe as the equivalent to a D-Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, as everyone is just kissing his ass and telling him that he's good at like whatever he says he's good at. But at the end of all this, Spencer gives a monologue stating that he is single and lonely, and that essentially launches us into the plot of the episode. So Carly reveals that she's hired a matchmaker for Spencer, and this person happens to be a host of a TV show all about matchmaking. First of all, how much did this cost Carly? Because you're paying out a TV star, essentially. Second of all, this is about the point in the episode where I completely lost interest and knew that there was nothing that was going to happen in this episode that was going to keep my interest. And I mean, this is iCarly that we're talking about, so I guess I should have known better. Harper starts telling Carly about her Mr. Cool Guy prototype for the perfect guy, which includes frosted tips. Excuse me, but what year is this? Are we in the 90s? Like, what? Why? So the matchmaker that Carly hired shows up, and for some reason she begins telling them the 3 rules that she has, but you know, the rules are supposed to be for Spencer, so I don't know why she's wasting her own breath telling them the rules. Spencer, the guy who this whole thing is for, finally shows up and proclaims that he actually has no trouble getting women, which is, yeah, that's canonically true, so I'll take that, and yeah, the whole episode is pretty much a waste of time, given that. I mean, at the very least, they could have fleshed it out a little bit with Carly sniping back and saying something like, well, you can't keep them for very long, can you? Haha, and then they play the laugh track, and then everyone laughs, and then it goes to the next scene. And in the next scene, we're at the Benson apartment where we learn that Mrs. Benson also hates Pearl. And we also get this little bit of insight from Freddie.
I'm sorry, she and Millicent are struggling to get used to me being in a real relationship. They somehow figured out a way to make sure that I only get male Uber drivers.
And this is just not funny at all. It just makes me feel sad, and it reminds me of how they've just completely murdered Freddie as a character. I remember reading some quote from Nathan Kress before season 2 started going into production saying that he wanted to make sure that Freddie wasn't as much of a loser this season. And yeah, you guys basically failed on all fronts on that. He's the exact same as the last season. At Spencer's apartment, we learn that Spencer has had sex with the matchmaker that Carly hired. And according to the matchmaker, this is not what a matchmaker should be doing. Back at the Benson apartment, they still hate Pearl, and the main takeaway from this little segment of scenes is that Freddie has found a new apartment for them to move into, so that way he doesn't have to live with his mom anymore. And he miraculously gets Millicent to agree that they should move. The matchmaker McKenna has informed Spencer that it was only a one-night stand and she would like to keep things strictly professional, which has left Spencer heartbroken. Harper and Carly come up with the grand idea that has never been done before in any sitcom ever before, which is to give Spencer a makeover to have McKenna see him as the man he truly, who she truly wants him to be. Millicent has told Mrs. Benson that she's going to move in with Freddie and Millicent to the new apartment. Man, that's not what Freddie intended. But if you didn't think that was comedy gold, well, I have something better for you. That's right, it's another interaction where Freddie gets steamrolled by his own daughter.
My office. Our office. I'll just use the kitchen.
There it is.
Now that, my friend, is comedy gold right there. Carly and Harper reveal Spencer's new look to McKenna, and she responds with this.
The biggest red flag I have ever seen.
But there's a crazy plot twist here, because the red flag isn't Spencer himself, it's the fact that he let his sister do a makeover on him. Freddie walks in on Mrs. Benson saying that she will miss Millicent the most once they're moved out, and this makes Freddie decide to completely abandon the idea of moving out. And then immediately after he reverses his decision to move out, Pearl gets insulted yet again. What are you doing, Freddie? What are you doing, man? You were one overheard conversation away from moving into an apartment with the one person in the room who seems to be a net benefit in your life. In response to what McKenna was saying to Spencer about his relationship with Carly, Spencer stands up and defends his relationship with Carly, saying that he raised the best woman he's ever known. McKenna starts crying because she says that all of her brothers hate her and she doesn't have a relationship like Carly and Spencer have. And then Carly comes over and says that she should patch that up with her brothers, and that seems to make her feel better. And that's essentially the end of the episode. Yeah, I'm not really surprised at all that this is probably going to be my shortest episode review out of all of these that I'm going to do. because when I was taking notes for all of these episodes, I actually only had 2 notes while I was watching the episode originally. The main takeaway I had was that I was just bored out of my mind while watching this episode. There's not really much of a plot here at all, and when there is any semblance of a plot, it's either something that I've seen before in a sitcom, or I already know what is going to happen at the end anyway. Not like that mattered at all, because like I said at the beginning of this part, this episode is canon breaking, so you might as well just shut your brain off. It doesn't matter. Don't analyze this episode. Just consume. Episode 6 is titled I Build a Team, and the episode opens up with Carly being depressed because she's having trouble coming up with new ideas for iCarly, the web show. Harper tries to cheer Carly up, but Carly tells Harper that things aren't looking so great for her either, as Double Dutch had recently been spotted wearing one of Harper's outfits and was labeled the worst dressed. Hearing this, Harper now thinks that she has lost her mojo and is no longer a good fashion designer. And, I mean, I kind of think that that's true, actually. It seems like she just likes to go over the top with no general sense of direction. Later at the iCarly studio, Carly thinks that she's come up with an idea to get them out of their iCarly idea drought. She's asked for fans to send in ideas for what they'd like to see on iCarly, and there's this little bit in there that I just think I need to include.
Well, let's delete all the ones from Mandy Valdez, and any with the word feet in the file name.
One of the fan suggestions for iCarly was sent in by none other than Josh Peck himself. Okay, it's not really Josh Peck, he's playing a character, but it's Josh Peck playing a character, and I think that's more fun to just say than his character name, which is Paul. Very boring name. We're just going to call him Josh Peck, okay? So Josh Peck was the producer for Italian QVC when Carly worked there, and now he's back in Seattle and wants to become the manager for iCarly. Carly is very into this idea, and Freddie is not. Freddie actually despises this idea because, you know, they've been doing iCarly for so many years without another guy telling them what to do. Meanwhile, at Shea What's, Spencer has put Harper in charge of designing the new uniforms. And my previous assessment of Harper being bad at fashion design is immediately realized when this guy comes out wearing the new uniform. For lack of better words, Harper did not understand the assignment. This guy would look out of place in Cyberpunk 2077. Accordingly, Spencer relieves Harper of her fashion designing duties and tells her that she should just sit at the bar and pretend to like the food for when the food critic comes later. Carly shows up to the KevinApp.org headquarters and informs Freddie that she has gone ahead and added Josh Peck to the iCarly team, and Freddie is not very pleased about this. Josh Peck proceeds to detail a lot of new ideas for the iCarly web show and ends it by saying that he can get them the tiny psychic on iCarly, which he claims would be a massive influencer collaboration. We then cut to the iCarly studio where they're about to start filming the iCarly web show with none other than the tiny psychic. And would you take a look at that? What is Freddie filming with? No, it's not a camera, even though he was filming with a camera at the beginning of this season. What happened to the camera, Freddie? But wait, it actually gets worse. You may not believe me, but this is about to get even worse. For seemingly the only reason why they're having Freddie film this on his phone, despite him filming on a camera at the beginning of the season, is just so that way they can do this stupid little plot point where Freddie has notifications going off on his phone, and Josh Peck comes in and says, "Oh, I could actually film this on my phone. I have the prototype and it's got 1 million cameras. Ha 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 ha." And then Freddie says this line, which is just incredible.
We shoot iCarly on my equipment.
What are you talking about, Freddie? What equipment? You're filming this web show on your cell phone. On your cell phone! Anyway, the psychic keeps pulling cards that are coincidentally linked to things that seemingly just happened. For example, she pulls a chicken card, and Freddie thinks that this is because Freddie was dressed up as a chicken at the KevinApp.org headquarters. Then she pulls a fox card, and Freddie freaks out because Josh Peck had wrangled a fox into the KevinApp.org headquarters. So he's like, "Oh, Josh Peck, you're setting this up. You told her to say this stuff." And they get really heated. They start shoving each other. And the next thing you know, the light falls onto the psychic lady's table. Her crystal ball is crushed. She's upset. Everything's a mess. And it just seems like these two are not going to be getting along. Back at Shea What's, the food critic shows up and he walks around, and it turns out this is not a food critic, this is actually an art critic. And I could go into like a little thing about how it doesn't make any sense for Spencer to get these two things mixed up, but that's pretty boring, and I've already done that about a million times with this show, so let's just move on. In an effort to get the two to work together, Carly has tricked both Josh Peck and Freddie into going into an escape room. Unfortunately for Carly, the walls of the escape room start closing in, and everyone is reminded that Carly is claustrophobic, meaning that it is now in both Josh Peck and Freddie's best interest to get them out of there as fast as possible so not to trigger Carly's claustrophobia. I'd like to point out that they use this god-awful static effect on the TV that is, it just looks so bad. It's so bad. And I don't fault the editor of this, because why the hell would you care? Just put in as minimal effort as possible on this show. It doesn't matter. More than half of the people that are actually excited to watch this show probably just watch it on their phone, so they don't notice. It doesn't matter. We also get to add a tally to our Ricky Martin reference count. Back at Spencer's restaurant, he's trying to put on this show to make the art critic happy and does a bunch of crazy and wacky stuff. But ultimately, the art critic says that it just doesn't have that Spencer Shea flair. Frustrated, Spencer goes over to a table, sits down, pounds it, and the table erupts in flames. This satisfies the art critic and he leaves happy. Back at the escape room, Carly has convinced Josh Peck and Freddie to put their differences behind themselves and work together to get them all out of the escape room. And I would just like to pause for a moment and show you just how few steps this escape room had. It is truly incredible. So the first thing we see them actually do in this escape room is Freddie messes with the TV and gets a code to pop up on the screen. And it's very possible that this isn't the first thing that they did in the escape room, but also, it seems like everyone was just kind of aimlessly wandering around the room looking for something. So I'm kind of tempted to believe that this is the first part of the escape room, the TV. I've done a few escape rooms, and this is very reminiscent of those times that I've done it, where we're just kind of looking around to find something to jumpstart the rest of the escape room process. So anyway, the TV is the first thing they do. They get the code. Josh Peck realizes that there's a briefcase and they put the code into the briefcase. That's step 2. They pull out a poster that says keep your chin up, and they look and they see this painting that is crooked. They move it into place. That's step 3. And they've completed the escape room. So they've done an escape room that was essentially just 3 steps. What an incredible escape room. And the best part about this, it took them 50 minutes to do these 3 steps. Incredible. The episode ends with everyone in Spencer's kitchen, except for Millicent. Millicent has been largely absent from this one, which is, can't complain. Carly and Freddie have come up with a bunch of new ideas for iCarly, and Paul is on board, and it seems like the team is, doing great. And that's the end of the episode. Overall, it's just a pretty average episode. Didn't really hate it, didn't love it, obviously. But the highlight for this episode has to be hands down Josh Peck. Drake and Josh was always one of my favorite shows as a kid, so it was fun seeing him show up here. And luckily for me, he's going to make one more appearance this season. But unfortunately, that's going to have to wait for one more episode. And unfortunately, that one more episode might be my least favorite episode of the whole season. Episode 7, I Dragged Him. Now, this episode is bad for a multitude of reasons, and I'm very happy to report that I'm not the only one that hates this episode. The iCarly subreddit seems to be in agreement that this is a pretty bad episode. For starters, this episode wasn't even originally titled I Dragged Him. It was originally titled I Carried a Watermelon. Now, why am I pointing all of this out? Well, it's because the original title of the episode, I Carried a Watermelon, is very clearly titled after the A-plot of the episode. The new title, I Dragged Him, is very clearly titled after what is the B-plot of the episode, which is what makes this whole thing so bizarre. And this is not just my opinion. The official synopsis for this episode on Paramount Plus begins by talking about Carly and Spencer's plot, which happens to be the plot that the original title derived its name from. On top of that, I don't even think you could really call Harper's B-plot a plot at all. Not really anything happens there. And I think the writers of this episode knew that because they included a C-plot with Millicent. And the worst part about it is the A-plot is probably one of the most engaging plots they've come up with for this reboot so far, and would have benefited greatly from more screen time, aka removing the B and C plots completely. But enough of that, let's actually get into the episode itself now. The episode begins at Shea What with Harper literally asking Millicent to explain the exposition for her C plot.
Explain to me again why your Model UN tournament's being held at Shea What?
They double booked the school's auditorium, and the debate team quickly and concisely convinced them to bump us out.
And the only reason why the Model UN is being held at Shea What is because the writers couldn't come up with anything for Harper's B plot. It's so substanceless that they needed to create a conflict by having the B and C plots merge together. And yes, I know that I'm once again getting ahead of myself, but this episode is so truly awful that it's like layers and layers and layers stacked on top of each other, where I can't explain why one thing is awful without also explaining how it affects something further down the line immediately, because otherwise you just won't truly grasp how awful it is. Anyway, Carly runs in and explains the A-plot to everyone. Her manager, Josh Peck, has gotten her an audition for the Great Big Globetrot, a reality competition show that is a parody of The Amazing Race. We also get more exposition with Carly talking about how Millicent is going to be going up against her nemesis at the Model UN. Alright, so Carly's told us what she's doing this episode, and Millicent's doing the UN thing. Freddie's going to be with Millicent. So that leaves Harper. It's Harper's turn to tell the audience what she's going to be doing this episode. Harper explains that she's received the opportunity to dress some drag queens, so she's going to be doing that this episode. And then Spencer shows up, ready to go for the Great Globetrot race, or whatever the hell it's called, and he's going to be Carly's partner. So we now have established what every character is going to be doing this episode, so now I'm ready to dive into the rest of the episode. They can play the intro, and I have all my notes taken. I know what everyone's going to be doing this episode. I'm ready to go. Wow, what a great intro. But it was so good that I actually have already forgotten what all the characters are going to be doing this episode. Well, luckily for us, both Carly and Millicent are here to re-explain their plots for the episode, which is, perfect, because I just can't remember all of that information. It's too much. This show is too complicated.
Geez, Millicent. I feel like my race to win $1 million is less intense than your Model UN tournament.
Yeah.
And everyone pop out the confetti because Carly is referencing Ricky Martin yet again.
Millicent, tone it down.
Mm-hmm.
That's like asking Ricky Martin to be less sexy.
Never gonna happen.
Freddie says that Millicent has driven away 7 other people at the Model UN and that she's getting too competitive like Spencer. This prompts Carly to begin reminiscing on game nights as kids, and we get a flashback where none of these actors look like the characters they're supposed to be playing. I guess Freddie got rid of all those freckles and Spencer got a body transplant at some point because these two don't look anything like their characters. Carly, on the other hand, it's close enough. Anyway, the whole point of this flashback was to demonstrate how Carly and Spencer behave with each other when they're in a somewhat competitive environment, such as when they play a board game. But in a little bit from now, she's going to have yet another flashback to the same exact moment where she realizes that she had been misremembering that situation. The game nights were, in fact, not as enjoyable as Carly remembers them because Spencer was so competitive. And this is typically where I would sit here and just rant for a couple minutes, where I would say, what the hell, why are they doing this? This is so pointless. Why don't you just show us that he's competitive? Why do we need to have Carly misremembering this whole situation? But then, when I was recording this, I decided to check the iCarly wiki page for one detail. I was beginning to wonder myself if I was forgetting that Spencer was super competitive. Is this just a detail of his character that I've forgotten? And the answer is no, I did not forget that Spencer was super competitive because this is a detail about the character that did not exist before this episode. The citation for Spencer being super competitive is this episode. This is the first episode in the entire iCarly franchise that references Spencer being super competitive. I mean, it just seems kind of ridiculous that we've already been familiar with this character for 97 episodes in the original series, and we're only just now learning about the personality trait that he's evidently had his whole life, yeah, that's really great. Why not just make Spencer become gradually more invested in this race and thus more competitive as the episode progresses? That would make more sense than trying to shoehorn in this personality trait that we didn't know about a main character 97 episodes in. Anyway, over at Harper and Carly's apartment, Harper is introducing the drag queens to their outfit choices. But oh no, all of the drag queens want the same outfit. What are they gonna do? This is a huge plot development. This B-plot is so bad that this is literally one of like 3 different conflicts in this plot. It's just one small thing after another because the writers couldn't figure out how to span this plot for the whole episode. They also do this, which I've just assumed is a reference to RuPaul's Drag Race or something because I've never seen it and this just isn't funny to me on its own, so I'm just assuming that it's a reference to something. Back at the iCarly studio, Carly and Freddie are getting ready to film the audition video for the Great Globetrot, and Spencer comes in and does probably one of the funniest things in this entire reboot.
Hey, I came up with the most fun idea for our video.
Already done!
I know, it's nothing that'll make you fall out of your chair laughing, but it got a good chuckle out of me. So Spencer shows off the audition video that he's already filmed with Carly absent, and Spencer walks off after Carly questions if they should send in a video in which only one team member is present. This gets Carly thinking back on the flashback she had earlier, realizing that maybe she hadn't been remembering it as clearly as she thought. Later, we see Spencer trying to prepare Carly for the race by being pretty much a nuisance to her. He sprays her in the face with water, has her do push-ups and jumping jacks, and has her drink this mystery cocktail. Back in the B-plot, Harper has put together costumes for all of the drag queens to wear. However, there's still 13 minutes left in the episode, so the writers have to pan this plot out by adding another conflict that can be solved in about 1 minute. All the drag queens say that Harper has decided the wrong costume for each of them, and they all just kind of choose which costume they want. And Harper gets pissed about this because I guess she has to make new altercations, but you know, she just kind of agrees to do that, and that's the end of the conflict. Back at Spencer's, Freddie and Millicent are here for some reason, and they're preparing for Millicent's upcoming Model UN event. We see Spencer chase Carly down the stairs from the studio, throwing ice cubes at her as she runs out the door, and then we find ourselves back with Harper, where she has finally finished designing all of the costumes for their new costume wearer. So the drag queens start coming out, and the last one to come out says this:
"Whoever said Harper couldn't pull this off was seriously misguided."
Why is there a laugh track here? Is this a joke? Because it doesn't sound like there's a joke in this sentence. I can only assume that this is a reference to something, but you know, I have no idea what it is, so I'm just sitting here watching it going, okay, guess I don't understand this joke or reference or whatever because I've never seen whatever material they're referencing. But I digress. I'll save that for a detour that's going to come right after this episode because it's well needed. We also need another conflict, so guess what? The club that they're going to have drag night at has been sold, and they're gonna need to find another place to do it. We gotta figure out a solution to this one. This is really, really tough. This is a huge conflict. Harper also does this thing again, which, you know, I'll say it again. I have no idea what this is. If it's referencing something, I don't know. I've given up. I've given up on trying to reason with this show. Outside, Spencer and Carly are getting into a limousine on their way to the audition for the Great Globetrot. But it's this limousine driver's first day on the job, so things aren't going to go exactly to plan here. So Carly and Spencer finally get to the audition challenge, and they're too late, so they've been disqualified. Carly and Spencer begin bickering and fighting over whose fault it is that they've been disqualified, and this is when the producer comes back over and says that they love their dynamic and they want them to be on the race. But then the producer says this:
"It's pretty simple. Just slingshot a melon to knock over a target and you qualify for the race."
And okay, I know that iCarly is not a representation of the real world, but this doesn't make any sense at all. You're telling me that if casting finds a team for this show that will make absolutely incredible television, they still have to pass a challenge in order to actually end up on the TV show? That doesn't make any sense at all. Even if that team gets eliminated in the first episode, you're probably still going to have an incredible episode because they made great television. This show does things like this so often, it's truly baffling. Like, they have this predetermined idea or concept, but in order for the show to get there, they have to change the rules of logic. And it's like, no, you didn't have to change the rules of logic to make this idea work. it probably would have been better if you had just worked within the framework that exists in real life. I can only assume that someone came up with a joke of the producer hitting on Spencer first, and then they said, well, let's build everything else around that. Because otherwise, it would only make the most sense for them to just already be on the TV show and running the race. They wouldn't have had to even compete for the entirety of the race, just have them get eliminated after the first leg. I mean, it probably would have been more interesting to see them actually on the race rather than them just preparing for it anyway. At Shea What, Millicent is preparing for her Model UN event, where we're also introduced to her nemesis, Henry von Biedermeier, whose character is clearly based on the world-famous YouTuber Jeremy Frederick Wilson.
Then I guess you haven't been talking to my mother.
Harper comes waltzing in with her squadron of drag queens, claiming that she's going to be using the space for drag night, despite the fact that she was told at the beginning of this episode that Shea What was going to be used as the space for the Model UN event. Despite that, did Harper even consult with Spencer about this space being used for this event beforehand? I mean, even beside the fact that Spencer and Harper are supposed to be friends here, I still think it's like common decency for her to have gotten permission from Spencer beforehand. And based on Harper's response to the fact that the Model UN event is taking place here and they've already had this space for at least a day, she really doesn't seem to care at all whether or not this is going to be inconvenient for the Model UN event.
Oh, this is that boring children's political event?
So with that being said, I must yet again ask the question, are these characters supposed to be good people? Because I genuinely cannot tell. Anyway, they decide to compromise and have both the Model UN event and the drag night combined into one thing. And I am once again very confused as to what is supposed to be funny when this drag queen comes out and this song starts playing, and it's immediately followed by a laugh track throughout pretty much most of this song. Creddie says that he now regrets telling Millicent to tone it down for her Model UN speech, and Millicent asks Creddie for permission to turn it back up against Henry von Biedermeier after he himself makes fun of Millicent for toning it down. We get this little sound effect for the third time this episode. This time it's with Creddie, so that's a cool way to change it up, I guess. So Creddie gives Millicent permission to destroy Henry, and she does that. And after she has done that, the kid runs out crying, and the drag queens say their little euphemisms about slay and whatever else they say.
Yes! Drag him, mama!
Over at the Globetrot Audition Challenge, Carly's been having some trouble doing it, and Spencer has been less than encouraging with his words. But Carly's finally had enough of it and confronts Spencer about how he's not been very nice to her. He says he's sorry for the way he's acted and says that he will treat her as an equal, and with this, really encourages Carly to do the challenge. But when Carly pulls back the melon in the catapult and releases it, it slings back and hits Spencer in his face, which is the first reference in this entire series that I've actually understood, as it's a reference to one of the most viral moments in the Globetrot race's real-life counterpart, The Amazing Race. The episode concludes with everyone reuniting at Shea What, where it is revealed that Carly and Spencer did not make it onto the Great Globetrot race, and that Millicent did not win the Golden Gavel from the Model UN event. And for the conclusion of Harper's plot, well, there's no plot, so there's no conclusion. So yeah, I'd rate this episode bad out of 10. This episode felt borderline incoherent with 3 plot lines with only one of them really having anything interesting going on. When the season 2 trailer came out, one of the clips they used was of the Great Globetrot Race challenge with the watermelon. I immediately knew that they were going to be parodying The Amazing Race, and I was excited to see what they were going to do with that. However, what we got was pretty lackluster. They could have been going to like an international Scrabble tournament, and the plotline would have been pretty much the same thing. What I'm trying to say is they didn't utilize the material that The Amazing Race has. They could have structured an incredible plot line out of that. There's so many missed opportunities and missed jokes that they could have mined out of this. Just imagine Spencer and Carly trying to compete in challenges and interacting with the other teams and hosts for the whole episode. That would have been wildly more entertaining than what we got out of this. Meanwhile, you have Harper and Millicent subplots competing to see who can be the most substanceless. Millicent's subplot is just, she's told that she's too aggressive, aggressive, so she tones it down, and then it turns out that she needs to be aggressive, so she does that, and that's literally it. And then Harper's subplot is only interesting and engaging to the viewers they're hoping to poach off of RuPaul's Drag Race. And I'd like to expand upon that for a minute, because I truly do believe that's the only reason why they were included in this episode. Evidence number 1, the plot sucks. It's substanceless. So that leads me to believe that they did not sit on this for like months beforehand and were trying to craft this so that way they could pull in some drag queens for it. Like, no. I think it's very likely that Paramount offered this up as like a cross-promotional thing between the shows, mostly making it so that RuPaul Drag Race viewers would say, oh, hey, I recognize those people, I'm going to check out this episode. And then Paramount hopes that those RuPaul Drag Race viewers are converted to iCarly viewers and they watch the rest of the show. Evidence number 2, the episode title change. I already talked about this, but the episode was not originally titled I Dragged Him. I think that this was a change made specifically to target the RuPaul Drag Race viewers and make them more likely to check out this episode. Now, this is all speculation, but I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if in the original draft for the script, there was no mention of drag queens at all. I think it's very possible that they just received an email out of the blue from CBS one day telling them that they would have drag queens on an episode of iCarly this season. And after that, they just very quickly stuck this thing that you could barely call a plot into this episode. And let's be honest, this is probably the most favorable look you can paint on this episode, because, I mean, if they really worked hard on this episode, and this drag queen plot in specific, that's just sad. I'm very sorry. I'm gonna close out this episode segment by looping back around to the Globetrot race plot, because I saw a comment on the iCarly subreddit that I really felt got it right. This user wrote, the old iCarly wouldn't have wasted this the great big Globetrot concept. Spencer and Carly should have made it on the show, and it would have been an hour feature-length special. And I completely agree, this idea is so ripe for an hour-long special in the old iCarly. I'm imagining Carly and Spencer get on the race and they find out one of the other teams is comprised of Neville and Chuck. It just makes so much sense, and yet they fumbled it so hard on this. It's just disappointing knowing that a better idea is just right there in reach, and yet they didn't do it. Man, Harper was even crankier than Sabrina Thompson's character, Lena Johnson, in the movie The Waitress in that episode. She was crazy. While watching this season, it really dawned on me what one of the main issues for this show is. It's that it relies so heavily on reference comedy, where it's not coming up with a joke for the situation, it's just pulling something and saying, think of this, right? You know this thing from this show or this movie? You know this person? Well, let's talk about them. And if you're someone like me who isn't necessarily in that same kind of pop culture realm that they pull references from, you're just going to be sitting there like having no idea what they're talking about. If I had the time or willpower, I would have gone back through the entirety of the Revival series and made a compilation of every single reference joke that they have made. But because I haven't done that, please just assume that I am correct here when I'm saying that they use references as comedy so frequently, it's actually insane. There were countless times while watching this season where I was just sitting there saying, well, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. I don't know if it's because they're just that desperate to get this specific demographic that they have to constantly make pop culture references to something that these people will like. But like I've said many times, why do they have to be catering to this specific demographic? Either restrict yourself to pop culture references that have been entrenched in the pop culture canon for decades already, or just don't make them at all, because otherwise it's just a really great way to isolate your viewers. Not that this reboot has done this, but in the original iCarly, when they would have a pop culture reference and it was kind of pivotal to the plot of the episode, they would at least build it up in a way that made it so you didn't have to actually know what that original thing was that they were referencing to actually enjoy and understand the plot of the episode. For example, when they had Fred on the show as a guest star, you didn't have to know who Fred was to understand what was happening in the episode. They do a pretty good job of explaining who Fred is, at least in the iCarly universe, and that's really all you need to know. A lot of the times it really just feels like the writers of this show are writing a TV show for themselves, and that's not the worst thing ever, but a lot of the times it just feels like the writers are wanting to shove something that they're fond of in the show just because they like the thing. I mean, the show Smiling Friends does a really good job of incorporating callbacks and references to jokes they've made in the past on their YouTube channel without the jokes feeling completely incomprehensible to people who have no idea what they're referencing or calling back to. And I know that for a fact because I was one of those people. So it is possible to incorporate things that you like into your show because you want to reference them, but it just takes a little bit more brain power and cognitive abilities to do it in a way that is very smooth and worthwhile. I will give them credit, however, for their Sonny and Cher reference in episode 10, which we'll get to. All you need to know is that Carly is dressed up as Cher and Freddie comes in dressed up as Sonny, and they make reference to them being a pair. I think they made it pretty obvious what was going on and that they were some sort of famous duo, and what they were famous for didn't really matter to make the joke and plot work. But unfortunately, there are just way too many instances of this being done poorly, and yeah, there's more to come. Episode 8 is titled I'm a USA Bae and begins with Carly and Freddie on the couch watching TV in Carly's apartment. Josh Peck comes in announcing that he has great news for iCarly, and they do a really awful job of doing an overdub for one of Josh's lines here.
When you woke up this morning, did you think it was just going to be like an ordinary day?
Josh reveals that the big news is he has secured a sponsorship deal with USA Bae Dolls to have a doll made in her likeness. Presumably a couple days later now, everyone is gathered at Carly's apartment waiting for her to open up the box with her USA Bae doll in it. So Carly pulls the doll out of the box, and it turns out the doll has giant breasts. This is a problem because Carly does not have those in real life. Carly begins reading the front of the box, which contains a list of all of the other dolls that I assume are in this collection, and she gets to the last one in the list and it's titled The Hot One, and this is the one that her doll is. And I don't understand why it took her reading this list to figure that out because it's literally printed in huge letters on the front of the box that she was reading, with her name on it. Harper then says this, which is just yet another joke that is a reference to something that I don't understand.
Emily Ratajkowski wrote a book.
I will, however, give partial credit to this because I did some research and Emily Ratajkowski is actually the actress who played Gibby's girlfriend in the original iCarly series. So now we have Victoria Justice who played both Shelby Marks and Tori Vega, and now we have Emily Ratajkowski who played Tasha, and I guess she didn't play Emily Ratajkowski because she's yet to make an appearance as Emily Ratajkowski. There could be more instances of this in the iCarly universe. I mean, I'm sure there are, but, you know, I'm too lazy to research that any further. Anyway, back to the episode. Carly pulls a string on the back of the doll and it begins speaking, and they don't really like any of the stuff that the doll is saying, and they basically yell at Josh until he makes a phone call to the USA Bae doll people. Later at Spencer's, Freddie tells Spencer that he's worried that Pearl is losing interest in him. Spencer says he has just the guy to help and gives a text to his friend Sully, who says that he's in. We then get an absurdly long 10 seconds worth of transition music to the mall. Josh Peck then comes in with his niece, who he's brought to help them figure out what they need to change with Carly's USA Bae doll. Josh Peck explains that his niece is a fan of Carly's, and this really just stopped me in my tracks, and I had to pause the episode because this is just mind-boggling to me. I thought that the iCarly web show in this new revival was supposed to be catering towards people around Carly's age, not little children. This child wasn't even in the age demographic that was watching the original iCarly web show. That was for like middle schoolers. And this child looks like she's just about to graduate preschool. So in what capacity is this little girl a fan of Carly's? Is she on her Instagram? Is she like following her Twitter? Like what's going on here? I'm sure that neither of those places are suitable for a child of her age either. So who is this doll supposed to be marketed towards? If it's for children, then why the hell does Carly's name need to be attached to it in the first place? And if the doll is for people who are around Carly's age, then why do they need to bring in a child to tell them what's wrong with the doll? It doesn't make any sense, and it's yet again another situation where I just think that the writers came up with one thing that they thought would be funny to do and then didn't think about the logic surrounding it. I almost feel like someone in the writer's room was punished with this episode. Like someone came in one day with the last half of this episode already written and then handed it off to like the guy they all hated the most and said, all right, write the first half, idiot. And then all the other writers like got up from their swivel chairs and laughed as they walked out of the room, leaving this poor guy alone by himself. So back to the episode, Jake from State Farm shows up and Harper begins hitting on him immediately. It turns out that Jake works at this doll store, and so Carly introduces herself and says that she was the one that talked to him on the phone earlier. And in response, he says this.
I'm Carly Shay. We spoke on the phone.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry, you just look so different from your doll.
How have you not seen the person that one of your upcoming dolls is based on? Are these dolls AI generated or something? Like, did no one look at the people that the dolls are supposed to be based on? Like, I know this guy probably didn't hand make these dolls, but he works for the company, so, I mean, he has to have seen at least some part of the process here. It's not like he's the CEO or something. He probably has some tangible hands-on activities with the business. His official job title, as quoted by Carly, is Twinkle Dreamweaver and Chief Ambassador. And those frankly mean nothing to me, so I have no idea what he actually does in this company. I mean, he has to be somewhat involved with the doll that is supposed to be of Carly's likeness because he's the person that they're going to try and get some changes made. This seems like a very dysfunctional company, and I doubt any of the sharks on Shark Tank would go in on an offer with these guys. So Carly begins telling Jake what she doesn't like about the doll, and then we flash forward and we have a new doll, but it's just as bad as the previous one. Back at Spencer's, we receive the craziest plot twist in the history of the iCarly franchise. Are you sitting down? Make sure that you have a comfortable seat. Make sure you have a box of tissues. Make sure you're well fed, well rested, because this is going to blow your mind. Sully is a monkey. Sully was always a monkey. Despite what we may have been thinking when Spencer said that he had a friend named Sully who could help, we all pictured a man in our head named Sully. Guess what? That man was a monkey the whole time. And you know what? I have to applaud the iCarly staff here because they used a real monkey. A real genuine monkey. This isn't CGI. They got a real freaking monkey on set. Incredible. Freddie shows up and Spencer and Sully come up with an idea to help save Freddie and Pearl's relationship. Sully is going to act as a baby so that way Pearl and Freddie have to work together and care for a baby, hypothetically saving the relationship in the process. Back at the doll store, Harper uses Millicent as a way to make Jake from State Farm like her, and she asks him out on a date and he says yes, so that'll be happening pretty soon here in the episode. And meanwhile, Carly is meeting with Rose to get feedback on the new doll design. Rose unsurprisingly does not like this new doll design, and it's very obvious that Carly does not like this design at all either, and yet for some reason she keeps pushing Rose to try and get her to like the doll. I don't understand what's different about this doll compared to the first one. She didn't like the first one, so she asked for it to be changed, and now she has this new doll that she also doesn't like, but she keeps trying to make it seem more appealing despite the fact that she's not willing to go and make any actual physical changes to this doll. Carly sends Rose away because this is becoming extremely unproductive, and Josh Peck shows up to tell her that he has good news. This is incorrect because it is neither good news nor news that makes any logical sense at all. Josh takes Carly to the back rooms where they have the storage for all the dolls and shows her that they actually mass-produced the first doll that she disliked. He then tells her that she needs to decide which one that she wants to go with, the hot one or the new ugly one that she just had made. And I don't understand why a choice needs to be made here at all, honestly. Is Josh delivering an ultimatum from the company itself? If so, why? He doesn't really imply at all that this is a decision from the company, so where did this choice come from? Why can't she just try and have a third doll made? It's sort of implied that Carly needs to make a choice because they mass-produced the first doll, but like, that's not Carly's problem at all. That's just really stupid decision making on the company's part. Meanwhile, in the B-plot, Slee is discovered by Pearl at the apartment, and they both agree to take him in and try to care for him. Freddie is excited by the prospects of this situation, but then Pearl calls Sully cute, something that he hates. Sully retaliates by bashing Pearl on the head and then threatening to throw a spoon at her. Pearl doesn't like how the situation is now going and says that she is going to leave. Back in the A-plot, Carly is really struggling over choosing between the two dolls. Josh Peck comes in and tells her that she's going to need to choose between the two dolls or they'll have to call the whole thing off. This excites Carly and she says, well, why can't we just do that? Let's just call it all off. And then Josh Peck says this.
No, you'll owe them a crap ton of money.
What do you mean you'll owe them a ton of money? What kind of business are they in cahoots with here? Is this like the world's most backwards licensing agreement? Is she paying for her likeness to be used on these dolls? It certainly couldn't be that, so the only thing I can assume the money is because they mass-produced these dolls already. But once again, that's not Carly's fault. She was under the very logical impression that she was being sent a prototype doll and she would be giving feedback on what she wanted changed before the doll was mass produced. And if they did try to charge Carly for this, I'm fairly confident that if she took them to court over this, she would win. So now we're left at the climax of this iCarly episode where Carly has to make this huge choice over something that she really shouldn't have to be making a choice over at all. The choice really should just be, make a third doll, or just get out of this situation altogether. So what does Carly do? Well, she combines both of the dolls to make a Frankenstein doll. The reveal of this doll scares all children in attendance, with the exception of Millicent. Back in the B-plot, Pearl walks into the apartment overhearing Freddie talking about how the monkey was brought in to try and salvage the relationship. Pearl explains that she goes too fast in her relationships and she was trying to take things slowly with this one. And Freddie says that he's done the same thing too. Back at the mall, Harper is on her date with Jake from State Farm and things are not going very well at all. Jake doesn't seem to be showing any interest in Harper and is focused primarily on the dolls. This upsets Harper greatly and she walks out on him. Meanwhile, Carly suddenly has this incredible breakthrough that maybe the doll doesn't actually have to have Carly's name on it. Wow. Who would have ever thought? It's certainly not one of the very first things I thought of when I watched this stupid episode. So now with Carly's name removed, she comes out with the original doll. And the kids love it. And that's the end of the episode. We end it on the resolution to a conflict that just had layers and layers and layers of things that didn't make any logical sense. I know this show isn't supposed to be Breaking Bad, but could the writers please make one episode where the plot actually has some sense to it? Even if the plots aren't going to make any logical sense, could you at least please make them interesting? The only good thing to come out of this episode was the monkey. Please put this monkey in every single episode for season 3. Thank you. Episode 9 is titled I Hit Something, and the season 2 episode from the original iCarly titled I Fight Shelby Marks is the first thing I think about when thinking of this episode, rather than any singular moment that actually takes place within this episode. I'll save more on that for the end of the episode, but I think by the end you'll understand why I've brought up that comparison. Actually, pretty soon you'll understand why I brought up that comparison. So the episode begins at Shea What with this man who appears to be in his early 20s taking photographs with Carly for his hospital prom. Carly and Freddie then take their phones out to try and find the directions to the hospital so that way they can get to the prom in time, but then the hospital boy begins laughing. He then reveals that this has all been a prank and that he is in fact the Prank Prince, which is a title I would like to have disputed because how is this a prank in any way, shape, or form? The extent of this prank is that he just lied to Carly and Freddie. If I dress up as a police officer and go and stand at an intersection and direct traffic, am I doing a prank? Well, I mean, based on the logic of this iCarly episode, I think I would be pulling off one of the greatest pranks of all time doing that. Later at Carly's apartment, she is very clearly upset by this prank, and I genuinely don't understand why. She had earlier explained that she had bought a $600 dress for this, but simply just return it. You didn't even really wear it. On top of that, this video doesn't even paint her in a negative light. In fact, it shows her attempting to do a good deed. Carly also announces that she has invited over another influencer to help her deal with her anger. That influencer is Sunny Day, who is played by Hannah Stocking. This is someone that I thought I recognized when I watched this episode originally, but I was too lazy to look it up and figure out who this person was. And it wasn't until I was recording an exclusive video for the Patreon where I discovered that she would actually be returning for season 3, and I decided to finally figure out who this person was. So Josh Peck is back. And Hannah Stocking is back, which I honestly don't know who that is. Who is she? Does she play a character? I genuinely don't know. Hold on, I gotta check. I guess I gotta check. Okay. Hannah Stocking as Sunny Johnson. Who's Sunny Johnson? Oh, this character, they're bringing back this character? This was such a forgettable character. Who the hell cares? Why is this one of the characters that they're like, oh yeah, we gotta bring her back? Hannah, is she like a big influence? YouTube channel. Followed by, who's she followed by? Marshmallow and Slushy. Nice. I thought that the name Hannah Stocking sounded familiar. I was like, I've seen that name before. And not because of iCarly. This is so funny that they have that Hannah Stocking is like such an incredible piece of the puzzle here, apparently. So Hannah Stocking is a part of the ilk of Lele Pons and Company, and despite their content being completely unwatchable unless you are a 10-year-old who has never consumed any media outside of Vine or TikTok, they had a permanent home on the YouTube trending page for a good couple of years. And now she has somehow graduated into the world of acting. So anyway, Sunny comes into the apartment, and here's what Harper says to her when she arrives.
I'm Harper Betancourt, IDGAF.
What is her problem? Like, what prompted her to say this to her? Genuinely, I don't understand. This seems like a response that maybe Sam would have given to her, but what is Harper's predisposition to hating people being kind and happy? I may be misremembering here, but I don't think there's a precedent for Harper acting like this. It just seems to come out of nowhere. So Sunny goes to Carly and explains some of her methods for getting anger out, and one of those involves hitting things, and she specifically says the gym. And Harper continues to make it known that she has great disdain for Sunny's personality. Meanwhile, we're introduced to the B-plot at Shea What, where Millicent has been paired up with her crush for a school project. This is an incredibly uninteresting B-plot, and I'm going to try as hard as possible to spend as little time as possible talking about it in this video. Back in the A-plot, Carly and Sunny have come back from a shopping trip where Carly discovers that she still has the anger in her. Sunny then suggests that the one last thing that they need to hit is each other and takes her to an underground influencer fighting ring. As they enter, Harper delivers this incredible line.
I don't know how yet, but this feels racist.
At face value, this line feels completely unnecessary and pandering, but it's actually here to forcibly create a callback joke for a line that will cause you real-world physical pain in just a short amount of time. Speaking of incredible lines, they didn't leave the well dry, and Carly gets to deliver another zinger.
Is this a Squid Game?
Wow, haha, you remember Squid Games? That was like a big pop culture moment. Man, everybody knows about Squid Games. That's pretty funny. I'm personally really looking forward to the season 3 episode where the cast just stands around and reads a list off of the greatest pop culture moments of 2022. As soon as Sunny leaves the area, Carly states that she does not want to actually fight anyone, but Harper suggests that she does do this. And with that thought left lingering on our minds, we are forcibly dragged back to the boring B-plot. The boy gets up to go to the bathroom, and when he returns, he is on the phone with his mother. He stands in the kitchen and says the following.
You're right. I just had to be nice. Now she does whatever I say.
My favorite thing about this is how Freddie is positioned as if he's eavesdropping on a conversation, as if he wasn't able to hear this conversation at the exact same volume had he just stayed where he was before he stood up to walk over to the kitchen. It's absolutely incredible. Millicent could 100% hear what he was saying on the phone. With this, Freddie decides that they should try to convince Millicent that she should no longer like Derek. Back in the A-plot, Carly and Harper attempt to leave, but before they can do so, they are stopped by Sunny. She explains to them that now that they've seen Influencer Fight Club, they must fight to ensure that they will not tell anyone about it. And I'm really sorry that I have to do this to you, but it is time for you to endure physical pain based on a dialogue choice that someone in the writer's room did make.
Wait, so you're blackmailing me?
It's African American mailing?
I'm considering starting a class action lawsuit against the writers of this episode, and if you also endured physical pain based on that dialogue choice that someone made, please get in contact with me because I think we do have a winnable case here. Back in the B-plot, Millicent is doing the project, and Freddie tells her that the boy is only with her to do the project. Carly is in the ring with Sunny and she can't work up enough courage to actually punch her. However, she hears two people laughing on the side of the ring and goes to investigate what is going on. It turns out that they're laughing at the very video that spawned her anger in the first place. And it's here that we get to see what this video actually looks like. And I guess it doesn't come as much of a surprise that this universe is filled with idiots when this is what they determine as comedy. Anyway, the viewing of this video angers Carly enough that she goes and throws a punch at Sunny's face, which was something that Sunny stressed several times not to do. And then all of a sudden, the prank prince shows up. It turns out that for whatever reason, Carly has been sharing her location with this person ever since she got pranked by him. Why did she do this? And it's not like she wasn't cognizant of this being a thing. She mentioned her location being shared with this guy well after the prank actually happened, and she just continued to let it happen. So the prank prince threatens to share this video of the Fight Club online, and this will reveal that all of the influencers are actually fake and not all about positivity all the time. I personally think that this problem could be solved by Carly threatening to press charges on this guy for stalking her if he chooses to release the video. But hey, no one in the iCarly universe is smarter than the dumbest person in our real world, so it does make sense that no one would have ever thought of this, even if they were given infinite time to ponder over their possible actions for recourse. So we learn that the prank prince has indeed released the video, and this has caused many of the influencers to lose their sponsorship deals. Carly angrily punches a pillow and afterwards realizes that she wants to destroy the prank prince. Back in the B plot, Millicent is going to confront the boy about the situation, and it is revealed that he was actually just talking about his puppy. Back in the A plot, Harper has catfished the prank prince into meeting them back at the exact same location that he was just at. The Fight Club. How did this man arrive at this same location and willingly walk back into it, knowing that he has just pissed off a bunch of influencers? And granted, the writers of this show seem to recognize how stupid this man is too, because they included this line of dialogue.
It didn't tip you off when Lakeisha, the jazz singer, invited you to the very warehouse Fight Club was held in?
So all of the influencers sit him down in a chair and yell at him about losing sponsorships, etc., and then they proceed to beat him up. And that is the end of the episode. Not really the worst thing I've ever seen, but obviously not anything great. It contains one of the worst lines of dialogue I've possibly ever heard in my entire life, and so for that alone, I think this episode is completely unwatchable. And like I said at the beginning of this segment, this episode really only did one thing, and that was remind me of a far better iCarly episode, which is I Fight Shelby Marks. I also found the B-plot for this episode to be painfully uninteresting and boring, and it only helped fuel my desire to just stop watching the episode entirely. It felt like a B-plot that they would have given Megan on Drake and Josh or something. Like, it didn't feel like material that should be put into an adult sitcom. It just feels very out of place. And now we find ourselves on the final episode of Season 2, I Throw a Flawless Murder Mystery Party. The episode begins at Shay What, where we learn that Freddie's birthday is coming up and he's very excited to know what his party is going to be, as he is not the one that is planning it. Freddie's girlfriend Pearl has been put in charge of the party planning, and Carly and Harper are simply coming along for the ride. Freddie's just a little more than nervous as he believes that the first birthday party will determine how well the relationship will go. Freddie wants his party to be a murder mystery party, but when we cut to Carly and Harper's apartment, Pearl is there explaining that it is going to be a crow-themed birthday party. Carly then explains to Pearl that Freddie really wanted a murder mystery party, and after a little convincing, she agrees that that's what they'll do. And throughout watching this scene in particular, something really stood out to me. Harper was noticeably dishing out negative comments at a very high frequency, and in conjunction with the comments that I noted in the previous episode, I think it's safe to say that the writers are very clearly trying to write Harper's personality in a completely different direction now. Whereas her comments have generally stayed just snarky, now it seems like they're almost always outright negative or rude. And I don't generally have a problem with this exactly, it's just going back to that thing of, are these characters supposed to be nice people? Am I supposed to come away from this show and say, hey, All of these people seem to be nice. It's not seeming that way, so with Carly trying to steer the party in a better direction, Pearl starts to doubt whether or not she actually knows Freddie as well as she thought she did, and she suggests to Carly that she should just plan the party herself. Carly, feeling bad for Pearl, suggests that they combine both of the party themes to create a crow-themed murder mystery party. Later, everyone begins showing up for Freddie's birthday party, and when Millicent arrives, it is made known that she is now dating the boy from the previous episode, which is a fact that I really don't care about, but I'm only including here in case that is a plot point for season 3. Pearl shows up dressed as Richard Nixon, which is apparently a big problem because Freddie is terrified of Richard Nixon. Carly explains that Freddie once got locked in the gift shop for the Richard Nixon Presidential Library where they housed a bunch of Richard Nixon masks, which frankly sounds like a more exciting episode to have watched rather than literally any of these episodes in this season. Freddie shows up, and when he sees Pearl in the Richard Nixon costume, he is immediately terrified. Carly rectifies this by saying that there was a costume mix-up and that she and Pearl are going to go and switch costumes. There's also a subplot here with Spencer and Harper that I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the way. They have both secured dates that can only meet up that night, and so they are both trying to come up with excuses and ways to get away from the party. However, by the end of the episode, they both realize that their dates were each other, as the dating app that they are using does not use any pictures or names for the people that they match with, which just sounds like an all-around safe experience for a dating app. I would also like to use this opportunity to reiterate my absolute and utter disdain for the writers continuing to try and make these situations where Spencer and Harper end up like almost dating, or they're like almost flirting with each other. It's just weird. Please stop. I don't want them to do this anymore. As the murder mystery part of this is beginning, everyone is getting their cards to find out what their characters are, and Carly ends up getting the character that happens to be Freddie's character's wife. Carly feels uncomfortable with this and tries to get Pearl to switch her card with her, but Pearl doesn't want to as she is the murderer, and this would ruin the whole party. And I think this is supposed to make Pearl look like she's the one that ruined the party, but let's be clear here. Carly is very clearly the one who messed this all up. You can't switch cards for this very reason. If you switch cards with the person who was the murderer, then there are now two people who know who the murderer is. 100% clearly Carly's fault here. Later in the party, Carly and Pearl have an aside where they discuss the party so far. Carly is pretty happy that the party is going smooth, all things considered, but Pearl reminds her that this is essentially just Carly's party. Pearl reiterates that she's not sure she even knows Freddie that well. And with that, Pearl says that she needs some air to breathe and leaves the party, and thus leaving Carly to pick up the missing pieces of this crumbling party. She tells Freddie that Pearl leaving was a part of the mystery party and they are moving to the mystery of Pearl being gone. So after Freddie tries looking for Pearl all around the apartment, he begins to realize that she is just not there. And it's now that Carly admits that Pearl has just left the party and that she has basically put this party all together by herself. And after Carly explains that she had to bend over backwards to give Freddie a party that he would have actually liked, this exchange happens.
I appreciate that, Carly, but it's not fair. Pearl is never going to know me as well as you do. Oh, Pearl, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Freddie. You're right. I'm never gonna know you as well as Carly does. Because you and Carly are clearly in love with each other.
And with that, the season ends on yet another cliffhanger. And I do have to say, this is a far better cliffhanger than the season 1 cliffhanger. Freddie and Carly's relationship, a topic of intense fan debate, going all the way back to the sweet summer of 2007. You know, something that fans of the original show actually care about. And believe it or not, I actually have quite a bit to say about the idea of the Carly and Freddie ship, or Creddie, and I'm going to be saving that for a detour directly after this episode discussion is over. Overall, I found this episode to be just okay. I didn't find anything in this episode that really made me frustrated like many episodes prior to it have, but there also wasn't really anything in it that made me say, wow, this is a really good episode of iCarly. I found Spencer and Harper's B-plot to be pretty pointless and annoying, and Millicent's subplot was so boring that I didn't even bother mentioning it. The only thing that I would suggest to enhance the experience of viewing this episode would be to just continue it where the episode ends. I mean, I feel pretty confident that there's not going to be anything that comes of this, and that Freddie and Pearl are just going to break up and that's going to be it. But now we're really moving away from the episode discussion, so let's just go ahead and jump into the remaining segments of the video and finish this thing off. Alright, calm down. It's not what you think it is. I assure you, the title is not what you think it is. Okay? Are you sitting down? Alright, let's proceed. If you went online at any point during iCarly's airing and you were looking up things related to the show, you came in contact with the iCarly shipping culture. It was basically unavoidable. While there were a bunch of very popular ships, the two main ones are with Freddie and Sam and Freddie and Carly, or Seti and Creddie respectively. And even though I didn't necessarily participate in any of this discourse while watching the show as a kid, I did have a stake in the matter, since I found Freddie to be an incredibly relatable character to me, and because I found Carly to be attractive, I naturally wanted the two to get together. So watching the finale of the original show as a kid, I was more than happy to see this happen. And in my head from that point onward, I just assumed, okay, well, they're gonna get together. Maybe not immediately, but you know, somewhere down the line they will. So coming into season 2, and especially with all the trailers and promotional material that they were doing to push the season, it was becoming abundantly clear to me that the end goal of this show was getting Freddie and Carly to be together. And that's great, I'm glad that they have some sort of overarching narrative for the show, but when 8 out of the 10 episodes have nothing to do with it, it just feels like they're using this thing to bring in old fans and nothing more. They should try to sprinkle it in at least a little bit throughout the season rather than just one episode at the start and one episode at the end. And it really doesn't help at all that the episodes in between the stuff that actually does matter are just not interesting in the slightest. In the original show, when Sam and Freddie got together, it was this big deal and they had back-to-back episodes where they were dating. Why can't we have something like that in this reboot? But instead, we're being yanked around and being told, oh no, just wait until the end, you'll see, you'll see. Am I actually emotionally invested in this relationship between Carly and Freddie? No. Do I want it to happen? Yeah, because I think it would be a good ending to the storyline of iCarly as a whole. But that's also really one of the huge problems with this reboot. We have an ending that seems inevitable, an ending that we can all see coming, but we just have to sit around and wait for it to happen. And in the meantime, I'm subjected to these awful episodes that are painful to sit through. In my opinion, I think that season 1 should have been about Carly and Freddie trying to get back together, and then in season 2 they do. And then from that point onward, it's just, you know, all in on Carly and Freddie. Let them get married, have a kid, buy a house, get a dog, I don't care, do everything. The show doesn't have to immediately end when they get together, but I think it is something that is necessary to tie up the entire story of iCarly. And with all that being said, I feel like that this should be the main focus of the show, if nothing else. We probably didn't even really need her to do the web show again if they were going to focus on this, to be honest. And this problem is just further exasperated by the addition of 2 characters who I find completely unnecessary and unneeded in this reboot. So, as I made it apparent in my previous video, the 2 main characters that they added to the show are just not good. And I'm talking about Harper and Millicent. So one of the main questions that I had coming into the season was, are they going to attempt to change these characters in any way? Or are they just going to be the same exact people? And I mean, there were some improvements, I guess. Let's start out with Millicent, who had a noticeably less significant role in this season. She did have the occasional B-plot that was dedicated to something she was doing, but for the most part, she was largely absent from this season. In season 1, it seemed like she was present in almost every single scene and episode, but in this season, she was pretty much only there when she was really needed. Her attitude and personality were also noticeably trimmed back, and it made for a more enjoyable viewing experience whenever she appeared on screen. I actually thought that it was a good idea to do her B-plot in episode 2 where she tried to be like an adult, and by the end of it she realized that she should just keep enjoying being a kid while she still could. This showed me that at least the writers were somewhat aware of how bad of a character she was and that they needed to kind of reel her back in. And I don't even think there were any instances where Millicent was being a brat to Freddie, at least none that I can recall. So overall, I do think that Millicent has improved as a character. Harper, on the other hand, not so much. It seemed like they almost did the complete opposite with Harper's character when compared to Millicent. They basically just took Harper and dialed her up to 11. We opened up the season with Harper being mean to Pearl for seemingly no reason, and it just kept kind of going on from there. A personal highlight is definitely Harper encouraging Carly to throw a drink in that guy's face at the bar, and regardless of whether or not that guy was in on it or not, it doesn't really matter in this instance. She still encouraged her to do that. And worse yet, her influence on Carly worked. She actually did it. So there's your answer. Harper did not improve as a character. She actually did get worse. They need to take Harper way back if they want to make this an enjoyable character at all. And if they want to follow any advice that I have, it's to remove both Harper and Millicent from the show. Because even though Millicent still is a better character this season than she was last time, I still don't understand why she's in this show. I honestly cannot find the logic in Freddie's guardianship over Millicent. It simply doesn't make sense. You're telling me that Freddie married Millicent's mom, they got divorced, and then the mom said, you know what, you're gonna go and live with Freddie. Yeah, your ex-stepdad. You can try and justify it by saying that the mom travels a lot or whatever the hell she does doesn't necessitate being able to take care of a child, but then what the hell? Why did you have a child if this was your job, if you weren't able to take care of it? That sounds like it's your fault. And if she took the job after she had the child, well then you already knew what the responsibilities of taking care of a child were. Why did you take on a job that would make you not able to take care of a child? It doesn't make any sense. It makes me think less of Millicent's mom and Freddie. It's just stupid. It's something that they added to the show that didn't need to be there in the first place, that just makes everyone look worse in comparison. I know I'm getting a little sidetracked here and I'm kind of rehashing some points I made in the season 1 video, but I just can't stop thinking about this stuff. It's so stupid. It's so mind-boggling. Anyway, let's move on. Alright, I've saved the best for last. Here it is. My thesis statement on why the iCarly revival will not work in any circumstance in its current state and format. One night, after watching one of these episodes, it dawned on me. What was making this reboot so bad? And the answer seems obvious, right? It's Sam Puckett. She's missing from the show. But the obvious answer didn't have the obvious explanation. What was it about Sam Puckett that made the show so dependent on her presence? And it's within this discussion about whether or not the iCarly characters are truly good people or not that we have our answer. And it's that Sam serves as a sort of linchpin. Sam's presence in iCarly obfuscates the true personalities of the iCarly cast. It's not really up for debate that Sam Puckett is not a good person. We've already made that clear. But what's not clear is what happens when you remove Sam from the equation. It's suddenly made obvious that maybe the other characters aren't really that good. Sam is a troublemaker at heart and in the original series served as the main driver for most conflict throughout the series. And now with her gone, you have to rely on other characters who are typically considered to be good people to do things that might be a bit more mischievous, or stupid, or just outright bad. And this is one of the driving factors that leads me to believe that this reboot simply just cannot work in its current state and format. It needs to be something more grand than just these stupid little episodic plot lines that don't really go anywhere. This is a show that's supposed to be for a more mature audience, so let's do something with that fact. Why does iCarly have to still be restricted to this on-stage studio set? Why does it have to be filmed with cameras pointed at a wall all the time? Why can't we move around in the set? Why can't we have a dynamic environment for these characters to live in? I'm asking these questions, but I really already know the answer. It's nostalgia. Anyone in charge of this show is too scared to do anything that's too different because the whole premise of this show is to bait people in with the nostalgia. They're not making this iCarly reboot because they had a bunch of great new storylines that they wanted to explore. They're making it because they know that Paramount Plus needs a show to bring in new subscribers. And sure, you can say this about any streaming service or television network, but whereas you have a show like Stranger Things where the creators spent years of their life developing a pilot for it and getting it made, you have the Nickelodeon executive just contacting Miranda Cosgrove and pitching this reboot because they know they need a show that will pull in subscribers for Paramount Plus. And this is really all just to say that they don't really care if the reboot works or not. The fact that Sam isn't present and that she had any tangible effect on the cast dynamics really doesn't matter to them. Even if they were only able to get Miranda Cosgrove on board for this reboot, I think it still would have been pitched as an iCarly reboot, even though it would have been the furthest thing from that. But if they were able to only get Miranda Cosgrove and Jeanette McCurdy on board, that would be another story, because to loop it all the way back around to the beginning, Sam is the linchpin of iCarly. And I have proof. I know what you're thinking. How do I have proof that Sam holds everything together? How do I have tangible evidence of this? And no, I know what you're thinking. No, it's not just the clips that I played of the revival stuff. It's one singular episode from the original iCarly series. And that episode is Season 3, Episode 16's I Won't Cancel the Show. It's the only episode in the entirety of iCarly's original run that Sam Puckett is not present in the entire episode. In the episode, Carly's dad happens to be able to watch the show live for the first time ever, but Sam also happens to be in juvie on this very same day. Not wanting to cancel the show, Carly has to figure out a way to do the show by herself, which really isn't that big of a problem. But anyway, that's the plot of the episode. She has to try and figure out how to do this show without Sam. And without Sam present in the episode, what do we learn about the other iCarly characters, notably Carly? Well, we find out that their behavior is practically unchanged from how they typically are when Sam is around them. Carly emotionally manipulates Spencer into appearing on her web show. Carly pours sour milk into Lubert's satchel, presumably ruining everything that he has in it. And they exploit an old man for internet clout who probably has some sort of mental condition. So with that being said, I feel like I can definitively say that the characters on iCarly are just bad people. And like I said before, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You have shows like Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the entire cast of characters are bad people, but iCarly tries to tell you that these characters are all great people, when it's just blatantly obvious that that's not true. And this is typically where I would go on and tell you about how they could improve in this regard, but I've genuinely come to the understanding that there's no saving this show. It is beyond repair. They will not be able to make this show in its current format and state a show that I will enjoy watching. Okay, I almost forgot to include this, but I don't know where else to put this in the video, so I'm just shoving it here at the end, like right before the conclusion. But when iCarly Season 2 was airing, they would autoplay this trailer for the season on Paramount Plus on the app. And the trailer had no dialogue whatsoever. It was only the music and the laugh tracks that they added. That was it. And it was like this for months. It was never fixed. This trailer was up for months. It would autoplay on the app's opening. And no one ever noticed it. It was never fixed. I keep saying it was never fixed. It was like this for months. Anyway, here's a short clip of what was a very long trailer with no dialogue at all. I still am baffled as to how this happened. Here it is. well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and like I kind of inferred, I'm not sure if I will be doing a Season 3 video because I just don't know what else there is to say, you know? But who knows? I'll never know until I see Season 3 for myself. But yeah, thanks for the support, thanks for watching the video. If you want to support me financially, like I said in the previous video, you can do so over on patreon.com/Rendivius. The link will be in the description. $1 a month is all it takes to get access to some exclusive content. There's a backlog of videos that are just exclusive content. They will never be on YouTube. And I have an ongoing series where I'm, following the Season 3 production of iCarly. I'm going through some tweets where I go and look at them, see what's going on in the production. It's fun stuff. This one, I really caught my attention. At Miranda Cosgrove, she's coming back, which I thought was very funny, as if like Miranda Cosgrove would not be returning. I also have some ideas for more Patreon exclusive content that should be coming soon. There might actually be a brand new series up already on Patreon. I'm not sure, I can't guarantee that. My next video project, which will not be an iCarly video that I'm working on next, previews for that video will be going up on Patreon first. I'm going to be doing a series looking at the solo career of the Beatles. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to be posting previews the same way I did for the iCarly video, just in segments. As I get them done, I'll be posting them there. And that'll be the first place to see them. So if you're interested in that content, it'll be there for you. Link will be in the description. And I think that's it. Goodbye.